Chapter 1531. Hua. Time and space twisted, heaven and earth shook. 4 figures flashed and approached quickly. Luckily, the elite guards were vigilant, otherwise, they would have been wiped out before they had time to prepare. Emperor Yi took a deep breath. Now, he could only use his life to block. Every second he blocked, the elite guards would have a chance to survive. Every second he blocked, the elite guards would be able to escape without a trace. Army, get ready. I will fight to the death with you. Paper King roared. For the glory of Snow Country. The army roared. The holy city was in chaos. The army was in chaos and there was no time to reorganize. Some people fled out of the city while others waited for death in despair. Actually, it was the same whether they fled or not. They couldn't escape from the aftershock. Wang. Emperor Yi played the zither to calm the despairing army. He hoped that they could adjust their state and at least hold on for a while longer. The heavenly zither music couldn't calm them down. The aura of despair spread. The sector lord's aura covered the sky. Killing intent rushed into the sky and tore at the zither music. The holy city was in chaos. Hua. A sword light broke through the void, slicing through the galaxy and piercing through the ground. It was like a laser, unstoppable. Boom. The sword energy smashed into the city wall and activated the holy city's city protection array. Holy light soared up into the sky. The sword chi slammed into the city walls, causing them to tremble. A deep ravine appeared in front of them. It was unknown how deep it was vast and boundless. This was the power of a world overlord. Even a casual strike from him could destroy the heavens and earth. The newly built palaces in the holy city collapsed. The tremors caused the blood of the weak to churn. The 200,000 armies fighting spirit erupted. They poured out their god power and cooperated with the 2 commanders to defend the city. The Silver Snake female cultivator didn't escape because the sector lord had appeared. Boom. A long spear broke through time and space. It pierced into the city's barrier like a shooting star. The powerful barrier was instantly shattered by the long spear. The long spear pierced into the city like a god of war. The shock wave blasted out in all directions and actually razed the inner city to the ground. Wang. Emperor Ye's 10 fingers were like shooting stars. The speed of the zither strings exceeded the limit. Countless air currents turned into sound blades that attacked the 4 sector lords. A firefly's light dares to compete with the moon. Lord Jingtian snorted coldly. He stepped on the void and appeared 1,000 meters away from the city wall. No matter how Emperor Yi attacked, he could not break through his defense. Emperor Yi realized that his attacks were unable to break through the sector lord's defense. He immediately pressed down on the zither and quickly stood up, letting out a low roar. Qin. Hum. The skylifting long Guqin willpower was on the city wall. Its 10 strings were torn apart like a giant longbow. Divine power poured out and converged into crossbow bolt. Zhigu and Zhu Wuxin joined forces, gathering the divine power of 200,000 soldiers to support Emperor Yi. The crossbow bolts grew larger and longer, carrying with them the power to destroy the heavens and the earth. Whoosh! The crossbow arrow roared, shattering the river and shooting towards Divine Lord Jingtian. Break! Divine Lord Jingtian instantly gathered the momentum of heaven and earth, as if the heavenly Tao had descended. He drew his sword and raised it upwards. The sword chi was like a rainbow as it cut through Emperor Ye's attack with lightning speed, shattering the arrow. Boom! Boom! Whoosh! Whoosh! The heavens and earth trembled, the city walls collapsed, and the enchantment was completely shattered. The army was drowned by the energy, and countless people turned into a bloody mist. Whoosh! Whoosh! Emperor Yi was sent flying, and his zither strings were broken. Die! Night Demon King's anger was the heaviest. He hated Yi Qinghan, so he transferred his anger onto Emperor Ye's head. His peak strength appeared as a huge hand that covered the sky reached out from the void and smashed onto Emperor Ye's head. The earth trembled, and the collapsed city walls soared into the sky. The entire earth trembled like waves. Boom! Whoosh! The saint's city was torn apart, and the mountains and rivers were torn apart. Whoosh! Whoosh! The other three sector lords' spears and divine swords pierced through the clouds, stirring up the saint's city, ignoring the lives of countless living beings. Dust filled the air, and the mountains and rivers were no more. 10,000 miles of land was flattened. Supreme Shenwu slashed down with his sword, directly uprooting the saint's city. The world-destroying power was like a shock-wave, completely destroying the broken saint's city. The remaining shock-wave spread for 10,000 miles, and the civilians and army that had just escaped were turned into dust. A bloody mist covered the mountains and rivers. Boom! Only a broken zither was left in the city, and a broken spear smashed onto the ground. Ju Xian's divine sword was also shattered into dust. 10,000 miles of land was silent, and only the 4 experts stood in the surroundings, sealing the land. No one could even think of escaping. Dust covered the sky, and the countless living beings in the saint's city were instantly wiped out. This was the strength of a sector lord. They hadn't even used their full strength, but when the 4 experts worked together, hundreds of millions of living beings, millions of soldiers, none of them survived. The 9-world sky was extremely vast, but the moment a world used its world power, even Yi Qinghan, who was far away in the Great Wasteland world, could feel it. In the Great Wasteland world, Yi Qinghan suddenly raised his head, and he could feel 4 different world powers surging. Great Wasteland could also feel it clearly. CSISI. Hoo. Yi Qinghan's breathing became hurried, and his eyes were burning with anger. In the 9-world sky, only the Snow Country's divine world could make the 4 sector lords act. Only the Snow Country's divine world's saint city could cause such a huge commotion. His wife and daughter were both in the saint city. No wonder Yi Qinghan was so angry, and the hostility in his eyes made it hard for others to breathe. Bastard! You've really angered me! Yi Qinghan roared. The 4 sector lords had already been tricked away, but now they actually attacked the saint city. Unless Swan Patian interfered, they wouldn't be his enemy. They might not attack the saint city. Let's go back and take a look. Gu Qingyu hurriedly grabbed Yi Qinghan's shoulder and reminded him. Yi Qinghan waved his hand. He didn't care whether he would be exposed or not, and directly moved the Great Wasteland's monument to take away all the foreign races, leaving only 8 people behind. Jiang Jingtian and his wife, Gu Qingyu and Feiringxue, Li Feng and his beautiful sisters, and Lord Kuehu. Yi Qinghan's body was trembling, too scared. Emperor Yi had waited for him for countless years, and helped him for countless years. Every time he was in danger, she had saved him countless times. Emperor Ye's life was more important than his own. And the elite guards, who had escaped a calamity back then, would they also die in this life? Don't die. Please don't die. Yi Qinghan shattered the void and took away the 8 people. The killing intent in his eyes was so condensed that it almost solidified. Xiao. Yi Qinghan used stellar transposition, which should have taken 10 years, to reach the border of the Great Wastelands in a short 10 days. The world energy in the center of the Snow Country's divine world did not dissipate for a long time. It was obvious that the sector lords had attacked indiscriminately, and no one could escape. Yi Qinghan's eyes exploded with an inhuman light. His killing intent soared to the sky, and his hair pierced the void like steel needles. His face was distorted, and the corners of his mouth twitched. Since you forced me, I'll show you the power of anger. Boom, boom, boom. Blood surged and huge blood roared. Yi Qinghan's eyes were red, and he was violently shaking. Jiang Jingtian and the others looked at each other, and then pressed down on Yi Qinghan's left and right shoulders. They reminded in a deep voice, now that Swan Patian has shamelessly interfered, it will be very difficult for us to win. The 8 of us can at most stop 2 sector lords, and the remaining 2 will be enough for you to fight. If Swan Patian joins in, we will all be wiped out. You must calm down. Since Swan Patian wants to touch Emperor Yi and Huang Xian, he knows that you will go crazy. He is deliberately provoking you. Chapter 1532. Jiang Jingtian and the rest tried their best to persuade Yi Qinghan, hoping that he could restrain himself. If he were to get angry now, he would be defeated sooner or later. After all, this was not a battle between Yi Qinghan and the 4 realm lords, but a ghost like Sui Patian. He could predict everything, so who could resist him? Ho ho ho! Yi Qinghan's breathing was unstable, his eyes were red. He wanted nothing more than to fight Sui Patian to the death right now. However, the enemy was hiding in the dark, like a sinister viper that could rush out and bite him at any time. Moreover, it would be a fatal wound. He was not alone. He still had this group of brothers who had followed him through hundreds of battles. Yi Qinghan suppressed his anger and brought the 8 of them to the Snow Country's divine world. After more than 10 days, the Snow Country's divine world was still in a state of panic. Although the 4 realm lords had only destroyed 10,000 li of the Saint City, it was enough to make the people of Snow Country panic. After a few days, the closer they got to the Saint City, the harder it was for Yi Qinghan to control himself. His anger was burning, and his heartbeat was accelerating. Shua! Yi Qinghan leaped into the vicinity of the holy city. Other than the broken walls, the rubble had been reduced to dust. Broken weapons and spears were scattered everywhere. Countless corpses were strewn everywhere, but even the most basic of appearances couldn't be distinguished. Ho! Yi Qinghan breathed out a few mouthfuls of turbid air. His divine sense locked onto the broken zither. All the strings were gone, only half of the zither's frame was left. His hands trembled as he half knelt beside the frame, holding the zither in his hands. Cold light flashed in his eyes as he scanned the surroundings, trying to find the corpses. A broken spear was stabbed into the ground not far from the city wall. It was the spear in Ji's hands. The wounds on the corpse were shocking, but from the clothes, it was clear that it was Ji Go. Even his soul had been erased. His head was smashed, and his flesh was badly mutilated. There were deep ravines where blood and corpses were surging. A violent wind blew and sand filled the air. Shua! Yi Qinghan rolled up a corpse from a wide and deep ravine. It was the corpse of the Silver Snake female cultivator. Even someone as strong as a fake realm lord did not have a complete corpse. Her clothes were tattered and she looked very miserable. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan leaped into the chasm and carried out intact corpses one after another. Some of them had been jolted to death, their souls dead. There were also some who had been severed by the sword Qi, their vitality wiped out. Zhu Xian's corpse was also found. The rest had been reduced to a pile of flesh and blood. Clearly, none of the soldiers were paramount gods. At most, they were giant gods. Their fleshly bodies couldn't withstand the shockwaves of a realm lord's attack. My son had the imitation feather spirit robe I made. Even if he died, he should have left behind a corpse. Xian had the dragon-scale divine robe on him, and with his powerful cultivation, it's impossible for him to die without a corpse. Yi Qinghan rushed into the river of blood and fished out corpses. When he found a complete corpse, he sent it into the air. Whoosh! Whoosh! Yi Qinghan did not mind at all as he continued to rush into the bloody ditch to search for a complete corpse. Jiang Jingtian and the others also joined in, each looking for a ravine. Master Kuei Hu and the woman from the spirit race stood guard outside. A large number of corpses were fished out, but Emperor Yi and the elite guard's corpses were nowhere to be found. Yi Qinghan had already rushed to the deepest part of the bloody ditch and finally found a corpse. It had been pierced by a sword and nailed to death. Yi Qinghan rushed over and used his soul sense to search for the corpse. 5 feet of white hair dyed red with blood. His chest had been pierced by a divine sword, and the imitation feather spirit robe had not been able to withstand the Realm Lord's attack. His face was pale and lifeless. His vitality and soul in his sea of consciousness had been crushed. Who else could it be but Emperor Yi? No, Yi Qinghan hugged Ren Huangyi as tears of blood streamed down his face. No matter how strong he was powerless to reverse the situation. Ren Huangyi had suffered a single fatal blow from the Realm Master. All of his life force had been wiped out, and not even a trace of his will had survived. Son! Yi Qinghan's eyes were filled with tears of blood as he roared. Even his voice had changed. It was impossible to describe the grief and despair in his heart at this moment. In this life, he did not know how much he owed Emperor Yi. Who would have thought that this time, Emperor Yi would directly lose his life? Yi Qinghan knelt on the ground and hugged Emperor Yi tightly. His head was on the ground and his body was trembling. The blood in his body was rushing up, and the light in his eyes was getting redder and redder. His aura was ice-cold, and no one could approach him. Hiss! Yi Qinghan let out a mournful cry. He could not even say a word. Jiang Jingtian, Gu Qingyu, and the others were speechless. Especially Gu Qingyu. Only he knew that Emperor Ye's position in Yi Qinghan's heart was above everything. At this time, Gu Qingyu saw that Emperor Yi seemed to be holding something in his right hand. He quickly reminded, Qinghan, look at what Emperor Yi is holding. Yi Qinghan was speechless for a long time. He also did not reply. His mind was in a mess. No one dared to approach Yi Qinghan. At this moment, he could go crazy at any time. Anyone who dared to approach him would suffer a thunderous attack. Everyone could only wait slowly. Time passed little by little. The scorching sun set and moonlight scattered over the mountains and rivers. It shone on Emperor Ye's pale face. Even though he had been dead for a long time, he still had a face that no one could look directly at. Everyone's nose was a little sore, especially the women from the spirit race. Their tears could not stop falling. The Realm Master was an existence that could not be resisted. But based on the current scene, Emperor Yi must have made a move and counterattack. Even though he failed, it was enough to show his inner strength. In the middle of the night, Yi Qinghan dispiritedly hugged Emperor Yi and leaned against a broken city wall. His eyes were lifeless. After half a day, Yi Qinghan pried open Emperor Ye's right hand. He found a piece of parchment on it. There were only a few words scribbled on it. Xian has escaped. Yi Qinghan grinned bitterly. Then he cried bitterly, You stupid woman! Why are you always so stupid? How much do you want me to owe you before I feel at ease? Qinghan, restrain your grief. We should be prepared. Supreme Shenwu and the others killed everyone in Holy City but did not stop us here. They must have other plans. Gu Qingyu reminded in a low voice. Yi Qinghan slowly raised his head and looked at Gu Qingyu. His mind was in a mess. How could he think of a plan? Help me bury these brothers. If there are intact corpses, bury them separately. Clean up the rest and build a cenotaph. Yi Qinghan said weakly. Okay. Gu Qingyu nodded. He, Jiang Jingtian, and Li Feng dug a deep pit along one of the blood trenches. They merged the rest of the trenches and formed a huge blood pit. With Holy City as the tomb, Gu Qingyu took a mountain peak from afar and used it as a tombstone. Then the cenotaph was completed. Next, he built a few graves near it and buried Zhigo Juwuxin and the others. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan hugged Emperor Yi and slowly walked towards the distance. Brother Yi, where are you going? Jiang Jingtian immediately asked. I'm sending you back to the great wilderness to the primal chaos realm. Yi Qinghan replied with a hoarse voice. Gu Qingyu and the others looked at each other. They had a bad feeling. They immediately asked, What about you? I want to flatten the 9 worlds. Yi Qinghan suddenly widened his eyes and stared at the top of the sky. He emitted a cold aura. You will never have the chance to return. Gu Qingyu roared, wanting to wake Yi Qinghan up. But Yi Qinghan had already made up his mind. He calmly replied, "Then I won't return." Chapter 1533. The four realm lords seemed to have disappeared. They suppressed their impatience and didn't ambush Yi Qinghan's group, allowing him to lead the 8 experts towards the Great Desolate. Near the border of the Great Desolate domain, on the peak of a majestic mountain, Swan Patian stood proudly with his hands behind his back, silently waiting. After a few hours, the 4 figures quietly descended. Swan Patian was still wearing a mask. The 4 realm lords frowned as they looked at Swan Patian, but couldn't see through his identity. If you want to win against the Desolate Lord, you must first cut off his wings and let him fight alone. In a while, we will go to the border of the Great Desolate. I will lure the Desolate Lord away while you guys kill the experts around him one by one. Swan Patian looked at the 4 and said calmly, "Why don't we destroy them all at once? If you really have the ability to fight against the Desolate Lord, we don't need to waste time like this." Supreme Divine Marshal coldly questioned. Song Patian sneered and said disdainfully, "You're underestimating the group of people around the Desolation Lord. Even if the 4 of you join forces, I'm afraid it won't be that easy to kill so many of them. Don't forget that they have twice as many boundary weapons as you do." "But they are not realm lords, they are just ants," Divine Lord Jingtian confidently replied. "When there are too many ants, they can also bite people to death," Swan Patian coldly reminded. The 4 realm lords didn't believe him. Yi Qinghan did have some experts around him, but there were only a dozen of them who were at the peak of the false realm lord. There wasn't even a true human king. How could he fight against the 4 of them? "In short, we will follow my plan. This time, we will first scatter them and kill Gu Qingyu, Jiang Jingtian, and Li Feng. Once these 3 are eliminated, we will use the plan to separate him from the other races. Then, the Desolate Lord won't be so scary," Swan Patian firmly said. At this moment, Yi Qinghan listlessly carried Emperor Ye's corpse towards the Great Desolate domain. He was muddle-headed and didn't know what the next step of the plan was. His mind was in a mess and he didn't have the heart to think anymore. He knew that he couldn't rely on himself now. Swan Patian was too sinister and vicious. "Divine Bird, can you predict what Swan Potion's next plan is?" Yi Qinghan asked in a low voice. The Divine Bird looked at Yi Qinghan worriedly. Emperor Ye's death was a huge blow to him. He had been with Yi Qinghan since he was a child, and had witnessed the love between him and Emperor Yi. He had also witnessed how Emperor Yi had saved Yi Qinghan time and time again. He owed Yi Qinghan again and again, and his love for Yi Qinghan had been sublimated time and time again. "Master, you have to calm down. One wrong step and you'll lose everything. That old bastard Swan Patian is clearly trying to make you lose your mind so that he can control you. I believe that when you see him again, you'll definitely lose control. He also thinks the same. I think he'll lure you away and let the 4 realm lords kill all your brothers." The Divine Bird was very serious at this moment and deduced Swan Potion's true plan. Yi Qinghan's breathing stagnated. Although Emperor Ye's death was a huge blow to him and made him lose his mind, it wasn't to the point where he wouldn't care about the lives of so many people who followed him. "You have to endure it. Even if Swan Patian appears in front of you right now, you have to pretend that you don't see him. You have to pretend that you don't know that he was the one who made the 4 realm lords kill Little Master. Let him use all his schemes and make him doubt his own intelligence," the Divine Bird quickly reminded. "How can I endure it? The enmity of killing my wife, the hatred of destroying my realm, how can I endure it?" Yi Qinghan's eyes emitted a cold killing intent as he coldly asked. The Divine Bird sighed. In terms of intelligence, it might not lose to Swan Patian, but it didn't know how to calculate the heavens or the earth or the universe. It could only rely on treachery to win. Swan Patian wouldn't give it many chances to play trick. His intelligence is something that only the military saints can contend against. If you want to win against Swan Patian, you can only do so if Yen Ao and Ling Yen are still alive and give them millions of troops. The divine bird was helpless and finally admitted defeat. Swan Patian made it feel too powerless. Yen Ao Yi Qinghan hugged Emperor Yi tightly. He looked towards the direction of the wasteland and sped up his pace. Jiang Jingtian and the others followed closely behind, guarding all 4 directions. They didn't dare to relax in the slightest. 10 days later, a group of 9 people and a divine bird appeared at the border of the wasteland. Just as the divine bird predicted, Swan Patian appeared in front of Yi Qinghan openly with a smile on his face. There was a knife hidden in that smile. Huff, huff, huff. Yi Qinghan breathed out a few mouthfuls of turbid air. Even though the divine bird warned him, he still couldn't endure this resentment and was burning with anger. Yo, silly old man. The divine bird saw that something was wrong and immediately took the initiative to shout at Swan Patian. Swan Patian's old face sank. This was the first time he was called this, and it was the famous lowly bird. He was obviously angry, but he quickly suppressed it. Wasteland, why aren't you saying anything after seeing this old man? Swan Patian deliberately provoked. Huff, huff, huff. Yi Qinghan's chest heaved up and down. His fingers trembled as he hugged Emperor Yi tightly. He was somewhat unable to control himself. The man who killed his wife was right in front of him. Could it be that he really had to endure? The divine bird saw that Yi Qinghan couldn't hold back anymore and quickly reminded, "This grandson is trying to provoke you. Even if you want to attack, he will definitely run away. You must not chase, or else we will all die. This is clearly luring the tiger away from the mountain." Shua. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and sent Emperor Yi into the great wasteland steel. Craziness heavy held in his hand. Sword Qi spread out and struck the ground, sending up a large amount of dust. Boom! Hua 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 hua! Yi Qinghan instantly slashed out hundreds of times. He cut open the river of stars and shattered the mountains. He wrapped Swan Patian within and a space-time black hole appeared, swallowing everything. Ha 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 ha! Wasteland, this old man has no enmity with you and wanted to remind you of some things. It seems like a dog biting Lu Dongbin. You don't know how to appreciate kindness. Swan Patian's voice was hollow. His afterimage was swallowed by the black hole, but it was obvious that he was not injured. In the next second, Swan Patian appeared at the entrance of the great wasteland. He looked at Yi Qinghan and waited for him to attack again. Boom! Yi Qinghan raised his sword. His momentum was like a rainbow, controlling 10,000 li. His cold face revealed a dense killing intent. 6/ Craziness heavy attack, reincarnation appear. Hua! A reincarnation black hole appeared in the 9-world sky, swallowing everything and drowning everything in front of him. The sword aura rumbled and was as fast as lightning. Swan Patian frowned. He raised his middle finger and flicked out a copper coin. It directly collided with the reincarnation of Craziness heavy attack. Boom! It seemed like a simple copper coin collided with Craziness heavy attack. Qi rushed into the river of stars and the reincarnation collapsed. The copper coin was split into 2 and turned into 2 streams of light. They attacked Yi Qinghan's main body. Break! Yi Qinghan's eyes turned cold. His will was like a mountain toppling and sea overturning. It carried an undefiable will and attacked the 2 halves of the copper coin. The Craziness heavy attack in his hand was like a hot knife through butter as it attacked the border of the great wasteland. Humph! You really are a mad dog. No wonder Emperor Yi and Bai Zhe were both killed by you. Swan Patian sneered. His figure collapsed and his main body had already moved to the interior of the great wasteland. Yi Qinghan wanted to chase after him, but the divine bird immediately reminded him, "This old thing is luring the tiger away from the mountain. Wake up." Chapter 1534. The divine bird strongly objected to Yi Qinghan's pursuit. It roared in his ears and didn't hesitate to provoke him. Yi Qinghan's eyes glowed with red flames. His breathing was rapid as he looked at Swan Potion's disappearing figure. In the end, he didn't chase after him. Swan Potion finally miscalculated once. Yi Qinghan had lost his rationality, but the divine bird hadn't. Swan Potion frowned and looked behind him. When he saw that Yi Qinghan didn't chase after him, he coldly snorted. He wasn't in a hurry to provoke Yi Qinghan. It would be too obvious if he came back to provoke Yi Qinghan. You can endure for a while, but you can't endure for a lifetime. It's impossible for you to break through to the World Overlord realm in a short period of time. Now that you've lost your rationality due to anger, it's even harder. Let's play slowly. This old man has played with you for so many years. You can't escape from my palm. Swan Potion sneered and rushed towards the depths of the great wilderness. The four world overlords watched from afar. When they saw that Yi Qinghan didn't leave Gu Qingyu's group, they didn't act too hastily and waited patiently. Yi Qinghan clenched Zhuangquang as his entire body trembled. One must know how much humiliation and anger one had to endure when the enemy who killed one's wife left just like that. The divine bird was also helpless. It couldn't predict what Swan Potion was going to do. It could only wait passively. This wasn't beneficial to their plan. It's better if we don't separate now. Once we do, Swan Potion will definitely be able to predict it. At that time, we'll be defeated one by one and we won't be able to reverse the situation. Gu Qingyu said solemnly. It was simple to not separate. But if they didn't separate, where would they get the resources? How would they cultivate? They couldn't possibly stay together forever. Let's return to the primal chaos realm first. Yi Qinghan's voice was gloomy. He wanted to bury Emperor Yi in the primal chaos realm's owl warstar first. He didn't want her to lie in the Great Wasteland's monument forever. A group of people quickly approached the Great Desolation Palace. The outside of the Great Desolation Palace was covered with green vines. Although the main body of the star-twining vine was no longer there, those vines were still entwined around the Great Desolation Palace. They were thriving, but their attacking power was much weaker. Several months later, Yi Qinghan and the others arrived at the Grand Desolation Palace. The entrance to the Primal Chaos Realm was located here, but the Psyche tribe and Master Kuei who couldn't enter. They were too strong, and they weren't natives of the Primal Chaos Realm. They would be ostracized by the power of the world. Even if the power of the world couldn't kill them, it could suppress their cultivation to the giant god level. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan stored him into the Great Wasteland's steel and brought the three experts into the Primal Chaos Realm. The four of them were natives, so the Primal Chaos Realm did not reject them. They easily entered the Primal Chaos Realm. Swan Potion watched from afar and felt somewhat dissatisfied. Yi Qinghan actually gave up on pursuing him and ran into the Primal Chaos Realm of his own accord. The four sector lords followed closely behind and appeared near the Great Wilderness Palace. Now, it was impossible for them to enter the Primal Chaos Realm. Even the spiritual race couldn't enter the Primal Chaos Realm, let alone them. Whoosh! Swan Potion's figure flashed and appeared above the Great Wilderness Palace. He said indifferently, "Don't worry, the Primal Chaos Realm won't support them to become sector lords. If they want to break through, they must come out. This old man believes that they will come out within 100 years. 100 years was indeed a long time for ordinary humans, but for these supreme sector lords, it was just the blink of an eye. They could casually cultivate a secret technique, and it wouldn't take them more than 100 years. Yi Qinghan brought the three of them to the Primal Chaos Continent. This narrow place was like the size of a palm to a fake sector lord. They could easily destroy it from the inside. However, if they wanted to destroy it from the outside, they would have to destroy the nine-world sky. The 4 sector lords weren't that stupid, and Swan Patian wouldn't do that. The 4 of them strolled through the mountains and rivers. In a flash, they crossed countless stars and appeared at the entrance of the Azura domain. This continent was the birthplace of Gu Qingyu and Yi Qinghan. The heavenly Tao seemed to be extremely sensitive to their aura. The moment they appeared, the heavens and earth rumbled. Golden light paved the way and strange phenomena appeared. It was as beautiful as a fairyland. However, Yi Qinghan wasn't happy at all. He silently appeared in the Owlfall Star, the birthplace of Emperor Yi. Lulan Empire, Sky Sword Sect's territory, Qin family. Yi Qinghan carried Emperor Yi in the air and said gently, "Son, I brought you back. It's been many years since we last met. This place is even more prosperous." Emperor Yi was speechless. His eyes were tightly shut and his jade-like arms hung limply. The sword in his chest had already been pulled out. He looked like a sleeping beauty. His skin was still soft and white. A strand of white hair hung down, causing one's heart to ache. "I brought you back to take a look. I believe you're homesick. After so many years, I believe the Qin family has already understood." Yi Qinghan smiled miserably. He brought Emperor Yi into the Qin family's ancestral land. Because they were Emperor Ye's family, no matter how unreasonable they had been protected by the Lulan Empire for so many years. Although they were flourishing now, they were much more low-key. The Qin clan also understood that the reason why they were able to pass down their legacy for so many years was all because of Ren Huangye's words. After so many years, their old friends were long gone. They had passed down their legacy for hundreds of generations and had a deep foundation. However, the Qin clan had been keeping a low profile all these years, doing good deeds and accumulating merit. They were deeply loved and respected by the people here. Yi Qinghan murmured. His eyes were blurred and he couldn't control the sadness in his heart. He carried Emperor Yi and stepped into the Qin family through the main entrance. The Qin family's ancestral land had statues of Yi Qinghan and Emperor Yi. When the two appeared, the entire Qin family fell into silence. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. They didn't expect the war god who had disappeared for so many years to return. The Qin family's old ancestor had returned. However, Emperor Yi had died in battle. The Qin family was terrified. "Welcome back, old ancestor." The Qin family, including their relatives, had grown to more than 100,000 people. When the bell rang, the family gathered and knelt in front. The Qin family's patriarch was a wise old man. His face was filled with reverence. He jogged from the Qin family's main hall and knelt in front of Yi Qinghan. He said with a trembling voice, "Welcome back, old ancestor." The Qin family's ancestors owed ancestor Yi. "If you return, we will kowtow 3 times and pray that ancestor Yi will forgive the sins of our ancestors." Bang bang bang. The Qin family's patriarch took the lead and kowtowed 3 times and 9 times. He was very respectful. It was a pity that Emperor Yi couldn't see or feel it. This apology came too late. Her life was a tragedy. Perhaps this ending was good for her, but she still couldn't be happy. "Ha ha ha," Yi Qinghan laughed. As he laughed, tears flowed out. He cried for Emperor Yi, but he also laughed for Emperor Yi. The Qin family has admitted their wrongs. Rest in peace, my son. Yi Qinghan hugged Emperor Yi and cried. He couldn't laugh anymore. Everyone in the Qin family looked sadly at Emperor Ye's limp arms. The blood had already coagulated, but he still looked like a fairy. His eyes were filled with sorrow. The statue of Emperor Yi, who had protected the Qin family for 10,000 years, had returned as a corpse. The Qin family owed her too much. Who would believe that the legend of the invincible god of war, that high and mighty man who could cover the sky with a wave of his hand, would kneel helplessly on the ground and cry? Everything was in a trance. It seemed ethereal and unreal, but it made people cry. Chapter 1535. Her pale face, delicate facial features, and elf-like face made her look like a sleeping fairy. She was motionless in Yi Qinghan's arms. Her soul and will had been completely destroyed by the Realm Lord. She wasn't Bai Zhe and didn't have such great luck to be able to come back from the dead. Her death was so peaceful and yet so spectacular. Buzz. The death knell resounded through the clouds and through the endless galaxies. Heavy snow fell and danced in the sky. Yi Qinghan released all the experts in the endless galaxies. Lu Aotian, Yi Chentian, Yi Xianxin, Yi Yun'er, the older generation of the Kuang sect, the younger generation, the great demonic god, the chaos dragon, heavenly sovereign Nangong. At this moment, no one spoke. The atmosphere was heavy. Emperor Ye's death was a huge blow to Yi Qinghan. No words of comfort would be better than letting him be in peace. Go back and look at your ancestral lands. Don't follow me anymore. Yi Qinghan disappeared with Emperor Yi in his arms, leaving only this sentence. On Owl War Planet, heavy snow was falling. It seemed like the entire endless galaxy was snowing. Jian Qinshue's snow-white robe fluttered as if she felt sad. She stood in the ancestral land of the Yi family with a large group of children. Seeing Yi Qinghan return with Emperor Yi, she couldn't help but cover her face and cry bitterly when she felt the lifeless aura of Emperor Yi. Although the two sisters rarely interacted, it wasn't easy for one to stay at home and the other to go out and fight. They both felt that they owed each other. In fact, the two sisters were very close. Yi Qinghan looked at Jian Qinshui with a trace of warmth in his eyes. He clenched his teeth and said, "Qinshui, my son is gone. Husband, restrain your grief." Jian Qinshui was silent for a long time. She wiped her tears and said in a painful voice, "Humans were not saints. How could they be emotionless? No matter how strong a cultivator was, they would still have emotions. A realm lord would also have anger. Maybe that Swan Patian could be emotionless and disregard everything. After living for so many years, even his descendants were all dead. Little Yu was merely a chess piece that he casually trained. He could let go of her at any time." Yi Qinghan looked at Jian Qinshui and sighed. "Qinshui, get up. Take the child home. I'll send my son to the ancestral land first." In the ancestral land, white flowers danced in the snowflake. To the east was the sea, to the north was the shrine, and to the south was the ancestral land. The ancestral land was filled with tombstones, where countless members of the Yi clan were buried. The spiritual qi was rich. Even though it was snowing in the cold winter, the celestial grass did not wither. There were thousands of colors and ancient trees stretched out. There was no one else in this huge star except for the crazy sect. The vast territory was all used as tombstones, and the outer sect of the crazy sect was also the tomb keeper. Yi Qinghan carried Emperor Yi and headed east. They found a place with good feng shui. The mountains and rivers were adjacent to each other, and they could see the sea from afar. The mountains and rivers were of the same color. Snow danced in the air like goose feathers, covering a large area in just a moment. Yi Qinghan's hair was dyed white by the snow. It also dyed his body white, turning into a snow-white robe. Boom! Yi Qinghan's thoughts moved, and the earth opened, the mountains and rivers moved, and the waves rose to the sky. The heavens roared as if in sorrow. The heavens were sentient, and it recognized Emperor Yi. It seemed that it could not feel Emperor Ye's soul, and was calling out to his soul. Emperor Yi did not move and did not respond. If she had stayed in the endless star system, she would have been immortal. As long as the heavens did not destroy her, she would not die. Unfortunately, if she left the chaotic realm, her soul would not be immortal. The heavens roared, and the golden light bathed in the snow. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and took out the materials for the divine weapon. The fire burned the sky and intertwined with the snowflakes, melting the materials and creating a divine coffin. It shone with golden light, and the Tao was natural, containing the laws of the heavens. Emperor Ye's body slowly fell into the coffin, and it was bathed in golden light, covering Emperor Ye's body. His face was white and flawless, and he was incomparably holy. My son, rest in peace. Let me take the heads of those 5 people and come back to accompany you. If I die in battle, my body will follow my will and come to be buried with you. Boom! The divine coffin fell into the pit. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and the coffin was sealed. Let's not set up the tombstone first. Yi Qinghan's voice was mighty. He was silent in front of the tomb for a while, and then he entered the tomb. This unfilial grandson, Qinghan, is here to worship the ancestors. If I go again, I may never return. I hope the ancestors will not blame me. Bang! Yi Qinghan knelt on the ground with his hands crossed. His face showed a trace of determination. Others might be able to endure this battle, but he could not. The enemy was waiting for him. How could he endure? Qinghan, think thrice. Gu Qingyu, who was standing outside the ancestral land, reminded him. Yi Qinghan suddenly stood up, drew his sword, and stepped out of the ancestral land. His eyes were shining, and his fighting spirit was soaring. Brother Gu, we have been brothers for so many years. You know me the best, and I know you too. If it were you, would you be able to endure? Gu Qingyu took a deep breath, held the snow god's sword, and said in a low voice, If you can't endure it, I will accompany you. Count me in. Count me in too. Jiang Jingtian and Li Feng immediately said. Yi Qinghan looked at his 3 brothers, the strongest 3. He was very pleased to have such brothers. However, he understood that even if they were supported by the experts of the spiritual tribe, Master Kuei-hu, and the rest of the insane sect, they would not be able to fight against 4-realm lord. Moreover, he was entangled by Swan Patian. If they went out, they would die without a doubt. Yi Qinghan pursed his lips, shook his head, and said firmly, No need. This world can guarantee your safety. If I don't come back, you will never step out of the primal chaos realm. If I die in battle, the hatred will dissipate. Just as the 3 of them were about to argue, Yi Qinghan waved his hand, summoning all of the experts within the Great Wasteland's steel. However, their cultivation bases were all suppressed to the giant god level. That way, the heavenly Tao wouldn't ostracize them, and they would be able to survive. Without my permission, you can't go out. Don't make it difficult for me. Help me take care of Huang Peng and let him recover. Don't come out of the primal chaos realm again. Yi Qinghan looked at everyone with a smile, bowed deeply, and then stepped into the insane sect. After bidding farewell to his mother, Wang Shi, and leaving instructions to Yi Chentian, Yi Xingxin, and Yi Huang, he hugged Jian Qinshu and whispered, Qinshu, I owe you too much in this life. I owe my son too much. If I come back, I will only accompany my son in this life and never leave Owl War Star again. I look forward to your return. Jian Qinshu knew that she could not stop him, so she replied softly. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan let go of Jian Qinshu and rushed into the sky. However, Jiang Jingtian, Gu Qingyu, and Li Feng followed without hesitation. Boom! Yi Qinghan waved his hand, which covered the sky and the sun, and pressed the 3 of them to the ground. I will seal the exit. Don't worry and stay here. Yi Qinghan roared. It was the same whether they were in this battle or not. As long as he wanted to escape, the 4 realm lords would not be able to kill him. The only enemy was Swan Patian. Boom! 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 The 3 experts were smashed into the ground by the powerful force and were forced back several steps. They could only watch as Yi Qinghan disappeared. Yi Qinghan used stellar transposition and cut through the sky. In the next moment, he appeared at the exit of the endless star system and entered the Azura domain. Chapter 1536. The chaos heavens rumbled as Yi Qinghan advanced alone with his saber. The killing intent in his eyes could not be suppressed. Although he had yet to cultivate to his peak state and was no match for them, he had no way of fighting without sending his brothers and sisters away. Yi Qinghan strolled through the primal chaos continent. He was as fast as lightning, crossing a region with a single step. This world was too small compared to the other 8 realms. For existences like them, it was only the size of 2 large cities. His footsteps seemed slow, but very few could discover his track. Boom, boom, boom. Hua, hua, hua. Dark clouds covered the sky, lightning flashed, and thunder rumbled. Heavy rain poured down, leaving behind the berserk. Under the lightning, the berserk became even sharper and colder, seizing one's soul. Raindrops flowed down his hair like pearls, wetting his divine robes. Divine radiance shot out in all directions and quickly evaporated, but his clothes remained dry. Crossing the continent, he headed straight for the forest. Everywhere he passed, no beasts dared to disobey him. At the exit, Swan Patian seemed to have calculated something. He frowned and pinched his fingers. It was actually a blur. Reincarnation didn't appear, Tao didn't exist, only darkness and chaos. Does this mean that his life will return to the primal chaos? Did he come here alone to face death and return without any hope? Swan Patian smiled faintly and muttered to himself, "What I want isn't your life, but that perfect world of yours. A world that can surpass the realm of Sector Lord. Let's leave this place first. Otherwise, he won't dare to bring his men out." Swan Patian said indifferently. Righteous Heaven Divine Lord and the others frowned. They didn't have the same goal as Swan Patian. They only wanted Yi Qinghan's life. They didn't care if he brought his men out. As long as they eliminated the desolate lord, no matter how many people there were, it would be useless. They weren't willing to leave. Swan Patian sneered and said with disdain, "If he brings a large group of experts out, I won't do anything. Do you think you can win? It's just a lose-lose situation. Perhaps you can kill all of their brothers, but can 2 of you survive?" Shwa! Swan Patian turned and left, disappearing without a trace. When the 4 sector lords heard this, they didn't dare to take the risk. They glanced at each other and rushed towards the border of the Great Wilderness. The Great Desolation Palace was still the same Great Desolation Palace. Half a day after the 5 of them left, Yi Qinghan walked through the exit with a long saber in his hand and landed on the Great Desolation Palace. He was wearing a majestic divine robe, while the divine bird stared at Yi Qinghan in despair. "Master, why did you drag me along with you even in death? You left the little gold crow and the star-twisting vine in the forest, but you insisted on taking me with you. What good would that do for you? I've been loyal all my life. Shouldn't I have a good ending? Please spare me." The divine bird roared unwillingly. Yi Qinghan was expressionless as he coldly stared at the divine bird. Yes, when he entered the great wilderness, he released the contracts of the little golden crow and the other spirit pets and threw them into the forest, but he brought the divine bird with him. Against Swan Patian and the 4 sector lords, what should I do to win? Yi Qinghan asked coldly. The divine bird was trembling with anger. This was a path of certain death, but he insisted on taking me with him. This fellow was truly despicable. This damned Swan Patian. This divine bird has never fought with him face to face. I don't even know if he is from the 9 worlds heaven. I don't even know his cultivation base. How do I know if I can win against him? If you want to win, find your military sage, Yanao. With our cooperation, we might have a chance of winning if we only rely on our intelligence and not numbers. The divine bird said exasperatedly. Yanao, where should I find him? Yi Qinghan took a deep breath. It wasn't that he didn't want to take revenge. He wanted to take revenge the most. However, taking revenge was not the same as throwing away his life. No matter how irrational he was, he should be able to kill his enemy. How would I know? You brought me here just to use me as a tool. The divine bird roared angrily. Why are you so exasperated? Do you think that I have no hope? Yi Qinghan asked in a low voice. The divine bird's feathers stood on end like a mad lion. It shrank its head and stared at Yi Qinghan. It wanted nothing more than to cut a wound on his handsome face. If you can calm down, then there's still hope. Little Master Patian Shah is just trying to anger you so that you can lead everyone to fight against those sector lords. He's scheming in the background to kill all of them so that your individual strength can grow stronger and perfect your own world. Once your world is formed, he'll take over your world and become its master. As for his ultimate goal, I don't know, but it must be related to the outer realm. The divine bird quickly speculated. Yi Qinghan exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. He knew nothing about the outer world. Facing Swan Patian, no matter if it was him or the divine bird, there was still a gap between them. If he wanted to win, he could only rely on Yen Ao's help. But where could he find Yen Ao? Is that person Yen Ao? How am I going to save him? Yi Qinghan looked at the sky, not knowing what to do. In terms of wisdom, only those with great wisdom could compete with Swan Patian. Yi Qinghan might be able to compete with strength, but he would never be able to win against Swan Patian in terms of wisdom. The truly unrivaled experts are those with great wisdom. Even if the divine bird was treacherous, it couldn't be compared to those with great wisdom, let alone a military saint. Facing Yen Ao, Yi Qinghan wouldn't have a problem killing 3 to 5 of Yen Ao. But in terms of life and death, even 10 Yi Qinghan wouldn't be able to win against him. Let's go deeper and take a look. If that person isn't Yen Ao, it would mean that Yen Ao is someone else. At least, he's not a zombie. If he's really Yen Ao, we have to find a way to cure him. We can only rely on him to deal with Swan Patian. The divine bird suggested. Yi Qinghan nodded and led the divine bird into the depths of the danger zone. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. Yi Qinghan's figure was like a ray of light as he rode the wind and waves with the divine bird. The divine bird heaved a sigh of relief. It was afraid that Yi Qinghan would go crazy and fight against the 4 realm lords and Swan Patian. At that time, what chance of survival would he have? If he died, it would implicate the divine bird as well. How unreconciled would he be to die? The divine bird was most afraid of death. Although it said that it would be loyal for its whole life, if Yi Qinghan was going to die, it would definitely leave a way out for itself. Why do you think they didn't block me at the exit? Yi Qinghan was bored and asked. Have you lost your mind from anger? Would Swan Patian let them kill you? It's obvious that he doesn't want you to die, at least not now. He just wants to force you to become stronger. He wants to create a perfect world for him and treat you as a free slave. The divine bird rolled its eyes. Yi Qinghan sneered and roared. He will pay the price for his arrogance. I will make him die a horrible death. The divine bird's eyes flickered. It was thinking about how to kill Swan Patian and also leaving a way out for itself. It didn't think that Yi Qinghan would be able to destroy Swan Patian. That was an old fox that was even more treacherous than itself. It wasn't realistic for him to kill Swan Patian in the 9 worlds. Chapter 1537. Yi Qinghan led the divine bird into the depths of the miasma. They searched for a miracle medicine that could restrain the poisonous creatures, but to no avail. If it's not medicine that can restrain the poisonous creatures, then it must be temperature. The temperature inside the miasma is definitely different from the outside world. Yi Qinghan pondered for a while and began to test the temperature. He constantly adjusted the temperature and observed the reactions of the poisonous creatures. After each test, the reactions of the poisonous creatures were different. Finally, when the temperature was slightly higher than the outside world, the reaction of the poisonous creatures was the most intense. When the temperature was higher, the poisonous creatures did not have much of a reaction. It seems that these poisonous creatures are warm-blooded creatures and cannot adapt to the outside temperature. No wonder they live in this corner of the wasteland. Yi Qinghan exhaled a mouthful of turbid air. It was fine as long as they could find a way in. Shall I guard the outside for you? The divine bird asked flatteringly. Obviously, it did not want to take the risk. No need. You've been with me for so long. Even if I die, I'll take you with me. Yi Qinghan replied with certainty. The divine bird rolled its eyes and laid weakly on Yi Qinghan's shoulder lazily and wretchedly. For revenge, Yi Qinghan firmly stepped into the miasma. The temperature around him was slightly higher than the outside world. Mournful screams rang out from within the miasma. It was eerie and terrifying. The poisonous creatures all drifted away, not daring to approach him. After entering the valley, the divine bird let out a sigh of relief. The valley was not too big and could not be explored. However, it was only about 10,000 meters wide. Besides the miasma and poisonous creatures, there was nothing else. The eerie white bones were crushed by Yi Qinghan's footstep. The white bones were like rotten wood, emitting crisp sounds. Crack, crack, crack. Roar. The bones were crushed and the wind was shrill and ear-piercing. It was eerie and terrifying. Some strange thorns could actually survive in this place. It was difficult to see beyond 5 meters. The poisonous miasma surrounded the place and screamed. Whoosh! Yi Qinghan waved his hand and the poisonous miasma dispersed. The valley at night was beautiful, but the hidden murderous intent made Yi Qinghan feel a chill. At night, the wild man in the miasma did not appear. He seemed to only appear during the day. Yi Qinghan followed the moonlight as he walked deeper into the valley. There was a small path in the valley. This path was the only one without thorns or weeds. The weeds did not even have a trace of spiritual energy. They were not even willing to devour poisonous creatures. This stone path extended all the way into the depths. The moonlight was unable to penetrate the poisonous fog, making it appear dark and gloomy. There were also many white bones in the depth. Most of them belonged to humans, but there were also many large beasts that had been completely devoured by the poisonous fog. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Yi Qinghan's breathing was very steady. He held his saber in front of him and moved forward step by step. He was very cautious. Sha-sha-sha. The sound of gloomy footsteps slowly approached Yi Qinghan, alerting him. The divine bird also noticed it and quickly reminded him, left front, about 300 meters. Swish! As soon as the divine bird's voice fell, a figure flashed through the fog in front of them. Yi Qinghan looked around warily. Light shot out from his eyes as he stared into the depths of the forest, searching for the location of the wild ghost. Swish! The figure appeared behind Yi Qinghan. However, as soon as Yi Qinghan turned around, the figure disappeared without a trace. Yen Ao. If you are Yen Ao, then come out. Don't tell me that you don't even recognize me? Yi Qinghan withdrew the aura of the giant blood and revealed the might of an emperor. The aura of the desolate lord filled the air. If this person was really Yen Ao, he would definitely awaken the last of his consciousness. Perhaps he might even be able to expel the poisonous creature. Screech! Roar! The poisonous creature let out an ear-piercing roar as if it wanted to devour Yi Qinghan. However, it was still somewhat afraid. The sound caused the divine bird's scalp to go numb. It sat on Yi Qinghan's shoulder while trembling. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it boldly said, "Little thing, this divine bird is not afraid of you. If you have the guts, come out and fight me one-on-one." Whoosh, 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 whoosh. The poisonous fog rolled like waves as it continuously pressed towards Yi Qinghan, trying to force him out of the valley. Yi Qinghan adjusted the surrounding temperature and forced the poisonous fog away. With a wave of his hand, the poisonous fog dispersed. The wild ghost stood not far away from Yi Qinghan, emitting a cold light. Yen Ao. Yi Qinghan roared once again, hoping to awaken the wild ghost's consciousness. "I am not The wild ghost finally opened his mouth to speak. However, it was very choppy, as if he had not spoken for hundreds of millions of years. Yi Qinghan was shocked. He immediately took a step back and said in a deep voice, "You are not Yan'eo? Then where did you get the clothes on your body? It has nothing to do with you. If you don't leave, you will die." The wild ghost's sinister green eyes stared at Yi Qinghan. His ferocious face revealed his fangs. "It has something to do with me. Sir, I truly admire you for being able to survive here and coexist with the poisonous creatures. I also do not wish to be your enemy. However, the waste on your body belongs to one of my brothers. I must know his whereabouts. As long as you are willing to tell me, I am willing to provide you with a large amount of energy for you to absorb. I can even help you adapt to the temperature of the outside world." Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed coldly. He was incomparably resolute. For revenge and to find Yan'eo, he no longer cared about the life and death of the outside world. Roar! The poisonous creature controlled the wild ghost to roar once again, warning Yi Qinghan that it would attack at any moment. Hoo hoo hoo! Yi Qinghan's breathing quickened, but he was unwilling to retreat. He continued to stare at the indistinct wild ghost in the fog. How sad is it to hide here forever and never leave the valley? Could it be that you do not wish to enter the vast 9 worlds? Yi Qinghan stared at the wild ghost and asked doubtfully. The wild ghost's figure slowly turned transparent and disappeared once again. However, it did not attack Yi Qinghan. Hua! Yi Qinghan waved his long blade, sweeping away a large amount of poisonous miasma. However, the wild ghost constantly changed its position and hid within the miasma. "Teach me the way to leave this place." After a long time, the wild ghost finally spoke. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed with joy and immediately asked, "Where is my brother?" "In the depths. He is the only human that I have yet to kill." The wild ghost eerily said, "I like people with strong willpower. To be able to control the body of the dead with just a strand of willpower, such a hero should not become food." The wild ghost's speech became clearer and clearer. It was unknown if it was a human speaking or if the poisonous creature was controlling him to speak. Yi Qinghan's heart jumped up and down. He was extremely excited. He finally received a piece of good news. Yan'eo did not die. This meant that he had a chance to deal with Swan Patian. This is the secret technique of the origin of fire. It contains the profound that I comprehended. As long as you can control the origin of fire, you will naturally be able to control the surrounding temperature. Leaving this place will not be a problem. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and took out a flame-colored secret book. He said to the wild ghost, "Bring Yan'eo here and hand him over to me. I will pass the profound of the origin to you." Hua! The miasma surged and flooded the valley. Only the area within 3 to 5 meters around Yi Qinghan did not have any miasma. The wild ghost silently retreated. However, the divine bird was slightly worried. If this thing was born and could control the temperature, would there be any living thing in the 9 worlds that could survive? Chapter 1538. In order to crush Swan Patian, Yi Qinghan had already gone crazy. He didn't care if the poison would destroy the 9 worlds' heavens. Moreover, he would be able to take Yan'eo away this time. He would pay any price without hesitation. The poisonous fog spread, an array of red light shone, gradually tearing the poisonous fog apart. The sunlight shone on Yi Qinghan's face. It was gloomy, cold, and cruel. Hua! Ka ka ka! The sound of bones cracking could be heard, and a black figure slowly appeared. The wild ghost person held a humanoid creature in his hand. He wore a set of tattered armor and held a 7-meter-long spear. He had a 7-sword sword equipment on his back, and a belt hung from his waist. He was about 1.85 meters tall and looked quite muscular and powerful, but he did not look fat. The distance was too far and Yi Qinghan couldn't see his face clearly. However, from the silhouette and equipment, it was definitely Yan Ao. Yi Qinghan's breathing became hurried. He was incomparably excited. He clenched his fists so tightly that even his body was trembling. Yan Ao, it's really Yan Ao! Yi Qinghan roared with a hoarse voice. The wild ghost stared coldly at Yi Qinghan. His tone was somewhat regretful, but no one knew what he was regretting. He's not dead. However, he only has a trace of consciousness left. I've occasionally extended his life over the years. Unfortunately, he can't come back to life. Many thanks. Yi Qinghan waved his hand and threw the secret technique to the wild ghost. He then looked at the wild ghost expectantly. A living dead is useless to me. If I can revive his soul, I won't give up on this body. His soul has already been developed by 80%. He's definitely the best symbiotic creature I've ever seen. Unfortunately, the wild ghost said coldly. Yi Qinghan's pupils shrunk. From this sentence, he could tell that the wild ghost's leader was the poison and not this wild ghost. Wild man took the secret technique and threw Yan Ao over. Pulling him closer, Yan Ao's facial features were like jade, and he looked younger than Yi Qinghan. He was vigorous like a pine tree, and his eyebrows were emitting a heroic aura. His vitality was faintly discernible, but his physical body was still alive. His last strand of will was maintaining his physical body to absorb the world's spiritual energy, maintaining his physical body's longevity. Yi Qinghan looked at Yan Ao's face and was moved to tears. He had thin lips, a high nose bridge, thick eyebrows, and black hair. The armor on his chest had been pierced through, and there were several large holes. However, the injuries on his body had been subtly healed. His skin was somewhat pale, and his face looked lifeless. A single Yan Ao was more useful than 100 pseudo-sector lords. He could use his intelligence to insta-kill countless people. He could also use his intelligence to defeat Swan Patian. Man proposes but heaven disposes. Even heaven's disposes might not be as good as Yan Ao's plan. Yi Qinghan hugged Yan Ao's body as he slightly bowed to the wild ghost and said in a deep voice, I am not willing to be your enemy and will retreat when I see you. However, if you continue to force me, don't blame me for being merciless. Humph. The wild ghost snorted. A cold light flashed in his eyes. His voice was ear-piercing, causing one's soul to be in pain. The divine bird frowned. This wild ghost was too scary. That kind of threat came from the soul. It was useless to play tricks. Yi Qinghan squinted his eyes at the wild ghost. Up until now, including Swan Patian, only these two couldn't see through him. He didn't know if the wild ghost had a symbiotic relationship with the poison or if he was purely controlled by the poison. He didn't know if the poison had its own soul and intelligence. Shua. Yi Qinghan quickly retreated. Everywhere he passed, the poisonous miasma would take a detour. Xiao. In an instant Yi Qinghan came out of the valley. Looking at the lifeless Yan Ao, his eyes were filled with seriousness. Although Yan Ao was found, it wouldn't be easy to save him. With Swan Potion's ability, he would definitely be able to predict this. He would definitely not allow Yi Qinghan to save Yan Ao. Back then, he spent a lot of effort to destroy the Great Desolation. He killed the Dragon of Resentment, destroyed Yan Ao and destroyed the Great Desolation army. In this life, he wanted to destroy the Kuang sect. How could he allow Yan Ao to return? I will definitely save you. Yi Qinghan's eyes flickered. The rank 12 dragon celestial grass was definitely useless. Yan Ao's soul was almost completely destroyed. Only a trace of his will remained. If it wasn't for the poison in the wild ghost's body wanting to save him, Yan Ao would have died long ago. It's difficult. The divine bird shook its head helplessly. This kind of living dead was probably the same as the wild ghost's body. Not much of his will remained. Without other creatures controlling him, his body couldn't even move. How could it be easy to save him? Think of a way. He's my brother. He's also my last chance to win against Swan Patian, Yi Qinghan said firmly. The divine bird rolled its eyes. Good things wouldn't happen to it. Bad things would always happen to it. I can't think of a way. With this kind of injury, he's like a dead person. How can I save him? I don't have any experience. The divine bird said lazily. Yi Qinghan carried Yen Ao on his back. He ignored the divine bird and started to rush out. When Yi Qinghan came out of the poison miasma valley, Swan Patian was sitting in an isolated courtyard. The courtyard was located in a valley where birds were chirping and flowers were fragrant. It was like spring all year round. There were thousands of red peach blossoms. They were all peach of immortality. They were very high grade and didn't exist in the 9 worlds. Swan Patian was wearing a white robe. He had the demeanor of a transcendent being. He looked like a supreme sage. It was as if everything in the world was under his control. He was very dignified and had a sense of righteousness. If one didn't know him, who would have thought that he was the one who controlled Yi Qinghan's fate? For his own selfish desires, he destroyed the great desolate land and threw the 7 worlds into chaos. Swan Patian had a faintly discernible smile on his face, but it made people tremble all over. He held a black copper coin in his hand, and it was exactly the same as the one in Xiaoya's hand. With a wave of his hand, the copper coin flew up into the sky and rapidly rotated. White clouds appeared in the sky, and a screen appeared in the blue sky. It was actually the scene of Yi Qinghan carrying Yen Ao on his back. Yi Qinghan could clearly be seen moving in the danger zone. Yen Ao. Swan Potion's expression finally changed. This might be his only miscalculation. He's really lucky. There's actually a trace of his will left. Swan Patian stood up slightly. His white robe was sharp and cold. His body wasn't considered imposing, but it was filled with majestic and terrifying strength. However, very quickly, Swan Patian smiled again and said indifferently, "Desolate, so what if you found Yen Ao? It's just a corpse. You can't save him. Accept your fate. Let me kill everyone in the Kuang sect and destroy all your worries. Then you can cultivate in peace. This old man can make you a supreme existence with the strength to kill a world overlord. However, you have to listen to me." Hua. Swan Patian waved his hand and a projection appeared in the true martial world. It was vivid and lifelike, looking exactly like him. It could act independently. It seemed like a clone but also like a projection. The projection flashed and appeared in the unparalleled world. "Divine Lord Jingtian, come out and meet me." Swan Patian looked at the central holy city of the unparalleled world and said indifferently. Chapter 1539. Swan Potion's appearance in the Supreme Realm attracted Divine Lord Righteous Sky the moment he spoke. Divine Lord Righteous Sky suddenly appeared outside the city. Looking at Swan Potion's mask, he frowned and asked, "Who are you? Since we are working together, why are you hiding?" Swan Patian smiled and took off his mask. He looked at Divine Lord Righteous Sky and said, "Divine Lord Righteous Sky, are you satisfied?" Divine Lord Righteous Sky didn't seem surprised. There weren't many people in the 9 worlds that he couldn't see through, and Swan Patian was one of them. "As expected, it's you." Divine Lord Righteous Sky stared at Swan Patian and said, "Seems like we have underestimated Swan Potion's name. Even your cultivation is comparable to a realm lord." Swan Potion's lips curled up into a fake smile. He wasn't willing to waste his breath on these realm lords. "Since you know it's me, I won't waste my breath. I'm here to tell you that Desolate Lord found Yen Ao," Swan Patian said. When mentioning Yen Ao, Swan Patian had a rare serious expression. In the entire 9 worlds, Only Yen Ao and Ling Yen could enter his eyes. As for Yi Qinghan, he was only used as a chess piece. What? Didn't Yen Ao die? I saw Ling Yen bury him with my own eyes. Divine Lord Righteous Sky was shocked and shouted angrily. Swan Patian shook his head and sighed. Only Ling Yen and Yen Ao can deceive me. I also thought that Yen Ao died. Unfortunately, Ling Yen held back and didn't kill Yen Ao completely. He left a trace of his consciousness which was found by Desolate Lord. This Yen Ao's intelligence is extraordinary, even surpassing Ling Yen. If he comes back to help, the four of you will definitely not be able to win against Desolate Lord. Therefore, you must propose marriage and kill Yen Ao. Find out where he is and we will work together to kill him. Even Desolate will be killed so that he will never have a chance. Divine Lord Righteous Sky's expression turned cold as he said, No, if he wants to escape, you won't be able to catch him. His speed is definitely faster than us. Swan Patian shook his head. He wasn't willing to kill Yi Qinghan. At least not now. He hadn't gotten what he wanted yet. Then what do you want? How can you kill Yen Ao? Divine Lord Righteous Sky frowned. Swan Patian sneered and waved his hand. The black copper coin appeared in the air again. Yi Qinghan's position. He was Yen Ao Potion's position. Right now, Yen Ao is seriously injured, pretty much a dead person. If we want to save him, there aren't many things, but there aren't few either. However, they are all extremely precious. Those heaven-defying things, according to what this old one knows, there are 3. Right now, Huang cannot obtain a single one of them. However, man proposes, heaven disposes. I am also worried that there are other divine treasures that can defy the heavens and change fate, so I don't want to gamble. Swan Patian pointed at the illusory scene in the sky and explained, Look at Yen Ao. He needs a large amount of life force to prolong his life. I don't even know how he managed to survive until now. Right now, Yi Qinghan doesn't even dare to put him into the Great Wasteland's monument. Desolate Lord Righteous Sky. The heavenly dragon gallbladder can save Yen Ao. Do you think Desolate Lord Righteous Sky can get the heavenly dragon gallbladder? Divine Lord Jingtian shook his head. Heavenly beasts lived longer than sector masters, so their strength was naturally not inferior to sector masters. Once a heavenly beast divine dragon appeared, it was enough to overturn rivers and seas. Even if 4 sector masters worked together, they might not be able to kill it, let alone Yi Qinghan alone. One of the 3 treasures is gone. The second one is at the top of the realm tower at the end of the 9 worlds. There is a heaven-defying divine herb called Realm Soul Grass. It is formed by gathering all the Yin Qi in the 9 world. It absorbs the Yin Qi of the sun, moon, and Yin Qi of the world. It has boundless vitality and can revive the dead. As long as there is a bit of will left in the person, it can revive them. It can even cause inconceivable changes. It is rumored that it can fight for the control of the 9 worlds. It can defy the heavens and change the cycle of reincarnation. It can borrow the heavenly eye to see through the mysteries of the heavens. However, with his current strength, he can't reach the 9th level of the Realm Tower. I also can't get the Realm Soul Grass. Therefore, he can't get the second heaven-defying treasure. Swan Patian was full of smiles. Indeed, nothing in this world could escape his eyes. Divine Lord Righteous Sky didn't know about this heaven-defying divine treasure. He was overjoyed when he heard it. However, he was soon awakened by Swan Potion's cold water. Realm Soul Grass? Don't even think about it. If a Realm Lord could get it, I would have done it long ago. Do you think it will be your turn? Swan Patian said disdainfully. What do you mean? Since it's at the top of the tower, what's so difficult about it? Divine Lord Righteous Sky didn't believe him. The Realm Soul Grass is the soul of the 9 worlds. If it was so easy to obtain, it would have been taken away long ago. Moreover, the Realm Pagoda has a total of 9 levels. Each step leads to a different level. The pressure is extremely great. It gathers all the pressure in the 9 worlds. At the 8th level, it can crush a realm lord to death. Even his soul can't escape. Back then, when I entered the 8th level, my soul almost couldn't escape. If you aren't afraid of death, why don't you give it a try? Divine Lord Righteous Sky was speechless. Swan Patian showed that he was a realm lord. However, even he couldn't enter the 8th level, let alone the 9th level. The realm soul grass was at the top of the 9th level. No one would be able to get it. The 9 worlds wouldn't let anyone get it either. The 3rd treasure might be able to save Yan'ao. I don't know what it's called, but I call it the Peach of Immortality. It's in a transcendent paradise. I don't know who created that paradise. As for the Peach of Immortality tree, it should be planted by the owner of the paradise. However, not everyone can enter the paradise. Those who can enter the paradise are people with great luck. Moreover, they have to pass the test of the paradise. If they don't pass the test, they will either die or be injured. Swan Potion's eyes flashed coldly. He said eerily, even if the desolate lord passes the test, he won't be able to bring Yan'ao in. Therefore, he has to split his body into 2. One is the desolate lord and the other is Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan has the bloodline of the giant blood race. The other races should be eliminated because they don't have any luck. The bloodline of the giant blood race affected Yi Qinghan's luck. Therefore, the desolate lord will definitely go in for the test. At that time, Yi Qinghan will naturally have to wait outside with Yan'ao. At that time, the 4 of you will work together to kill the desolate lord's clone and eliminate Yan'ao. Where's the paradise? Divine Lord Righteous Sky asked excitedly. It's also at the end of the 9 worlds. It's beside the World Tower. Follow the transcendent world to the west. After crossing the lacerated danger ground, you will reach the World Tower. If you want to take a detour, you can do so. However, I advise you not to go. Otherwise, don't blame me if you die. Swan Patian laughed eerily. Spread the location of the World Tower and the paradise. Inform everyone in the world to let the desolate lord go in for the test. Divine Lord Righteous Sky's eyes widened. He asked unhappily, since you know that the test is very dangerous, how many innocent people will be killed if you inform everyone in the world? Ha ha ha, Swan Patian laughed maniacally. He looked coldly at Divine Lord Righteous Sky and asked disdainfully, since when has Divine Lord Righteous Sky cared about the lives of ants? Divine Lord Righteous Sky's expression turned ugly. Although he didn't care about the ants of other worlds, it didn't mean that he didn't care about the citizens of the transcendent world. Once this news spread out, who knows how many people would desperately rush towards the World Tower. Chapter 1540. A few days later, some news suddenly spread from the 9 worlds' heavens. It was all about the paradise and heaven-defying divine treasures in the Realm Tower. Countless adventurers risked their lives to head to the final destination of the 9 worlds' heavens. There were 2 paths to the final destination of the 9 worlds' heavens. The first path was to tear through the danger zone, which was the shortest but also the most dangerous. The second path required one to take a detour and traverse the distance of 3 worlds to reach the final destination. Countless experts left their homes and started trekking towards the final destination. Of course, those who could reach the final destination of the 9 worlds' heavens were at least giant god. Moreover, they had to be speed-type experts. Otherwise, with the speed of an ordinary high god, they wouldn't be able to reach the final destination even if they ran to their deaths. Those below the giant god level had no choice but to give up on the final destination of the 9 worlds' heavens. The 4 realm lords selected a group of young kings to head to the great wasteland world to gain experience. Their cultivation base was very low, but their combat strength wasn't bad. Perhaps it was a compensation for them. A large group of young high god priests appeared in the great wasteland world to gain experience. It was impossible for Yi Qinghan to not notice them. When those people saw the three heaven-defying divine treasures, how could they not be tempted? Since they dared to call themselves heaven-defying divine treasures, they naturally could defy the heavens and change fate, reversing reincarnation. Even if they couldn't save Emperor Yi, Yan Ao's injuries could still reverse the situation. Whoosh, whoosh. Yi Qinghan carried Yan Ao on his back and appeared at the exit of the great wasteland world with the divine bird. They entered the divine world of Snow Country and looked at the discussions of the people. Everyone was drooling over the realm spirit grass in the realm tower. Once they obtained such a supreme treasure, it was equivalent to becoming the master of the 9 worlds heavens. In a small city, Yi Qinghan carried Yan Ao on his back and walked on the main road in a low-key manner. Sigh, even if I can't get the realm spirit grass, getting a peach of immortality is also very good. Unfortunately, my cultivation base is too low and my speed is too slow. I'll probably die of old age by the time I reach the final destination. A high god old man shook his head helplessly and said to the person beside him, "Ha ha ha, old man Yang, don't even think about it. I've heard that even the almighty realm lords can only obtain 1 peach of immortality after entering their blessed lands. Then, they will be teleported away by the natural laws inside. Even overgods might not be able to enter their blessed lands. How can we, mere mortals, be allowed to enter?" Another old man said with a wry smile. Everyone was talking about the heaven-defying elixir. As for the Eastern Sea's heavenly beast divine dragon, it was impossible for them to have any ideas about it. Even Yi Qinghan would not fight with a heavenly beast, let alone them. Tear apart the Jedi or take a detour. After Yi Qinghan made some inquiries, he came up with a detailed plan. Obviously, he cannot bring Yan Ao into the tearing danger ground. It is too dangerous. We will take a detour from the human territory. This is the Snow Country's divine realm. We will head west towards the ultimate martial realm and follow the ultimate martial realm's border towards the unparalleled realm. After crossing the unparalleled realm, we will enter the divine martial realm and head towards the 6-beast realm. After exiting the 6-beast realm, we will reach the final destination of the 9-world heavens. That should be where the realm tower is, blocking the path to the outside world. Yi Qinghan pulled out the divine bird and quickly drew a simple map. He pointed at the map and said, "Help me take a look and see if there are any shorter paths. We will reach there as soon as possible." The divine bird stared at the map and saw that there were no shorter paths. It shook its head and reminded, "You are carrying Yan Ao, it is too obvious. I don't believe that old bastard Swan Patian didn't know that you have already found Yan Ao. Moreover, the appearance of the 3 heaven-defying divine herbs is too sudden. I suspect that Swan Patian purposely revealed them to lure us over." Yi Qinghan pondered for a while and said firmly, "If there is really a peach of immortality that can prolong my life, even if Swan Patian is purposely luring us over, I have no choice but to go. However, if he can calculate well, he needs someone who can execute it. Those 4 realm lords are just trash in my eyes. So what if I can't defeat them now? Since that is the case, let's use the taming desolate beast. We can build a carriage and let it pull us. It can also reduce our consumption," the divine bird suggested excitedly. Yi Qinghan rejected. His current strength is not that of a desolate lord. The taming desolate beast is also not an adult divine beast. Its strength is far inferior to a realm lord. If they are surrounded by realm lords, the taming desolate beast will die without a doubt. We will use the Snow Country's snow beast. It is similar to a horse, but its speed, strength and endurance are very strong. It is enough. Yi Qinghan pondered for a while and decided to use the snow beast. In the past, Marshal Yun's mount was also a snow beast. Yi Qinghan immediately headed towards the human city, god of Fortune City. Although the Wang family was destroyed, it was still the gathering place of the #1 corporation. There was everything in the city. The current god of Fortune City was still under the control of the left Marshall Mansion. Although the Saint City was destroyed, they didn't dare to betray Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan carried Yan Ao and teleported continuously. Although their speed was fast, their consumption was also very fast. After a few days, they appeared in God of Fortune City. Swish! Yi Qinghan activated the left Marshall seal. It enlarged infinitely and shone with golden light, illuminating the entire God of Fortune City. A middle-aged man appeared in the city. He was tall and sturdy and looked like a soldier. Greetings to the left Marshal. The man knelt and said respectfully, "Get up and prepare 30 of the strongest snow beasts for me. 10 of the best carriages and 2 of the best drivers. I want to rush to the World Tower." Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice. The man quickly got up and said, "Left Marshal, the snow beasts are all in the hands of the corporations. Tell them that I want them. Give me the best snow beasts from their clans. I already know where the best snow beasts are in the city. Whoever dares to hide them will have their entire clan wiped out." Yi Qinghan said coldly. The man quickly left and mobilized the army to rush to each clan and ask for the snow beasts. The snow beasts looked like unicorns, but they were snow-white and had extremely long hair. They were about 3 meters tall and moved as if they were flying. Although their speed was not as fast as the sky desolate beast, 30 of them in rotation was definitely faster than Yi Qinghan. The key was that they could conserve a large amount of god power and avoid being caught unprepared when ambushed. The city knew that they did not dare to go against the left Marshal's orders. They offered up all the best snow beasts. There were a total of 50 snow beasts. 5 of them drove a carriage. 1 rotation per day was enough for 10 days. 10 days was enough for the snow beasts to recover. The man sent over 10 steel carriages and 2 drivers. Their driving experience was definitely extraordinary. They moved quickly as if they were on flat ground. Yi Qinghan used the Great Wasteland Monument to take away 9 carriages and 45 snow beasts. The 2 drivers put the carriages and the snow beasts together and respectfully said to Yi Qinghan, "Lord Left Marshal, please get on the carriage." "Good. Thank you for your hard work." Yi Qinghan glanced at the 2 middle-aged coachmen, then turned to the burly city lord and said in a deep voice, "Let these 2 gentlemen have nothing to worry about. Reward each of their families with 10,000 top-grade divine snow stones and 3 supreme secret techniques." "Yes, my lord." The man did not hesitate to agree. Yi Qinghan carried Yan Ao onto the carriage and said to the drivers, "You 2 take turns driving. Each of you will rest for 10 days. When driving, you must be fast and steady." "Understood. Giddy up." With an order, the carriage quickly moved forward. Although it was a bit bumpy at the start, it was as if they were walking on flat ground. Outside the carriage window, time reversed and everything flew backwards. Chapter 1541. The snow beast was like a ray of light, its snow-white fur turned into a bolt of lightning and charged towards the ultimate martial realm. Yi Qinghan sat in the carriage and surrounded Yan Ao with hundreds of level 12 dragon immortal grass. A single level 12 dragon immortal grass was priceless, but it was nothing in his eyes. For Yan Ao's life, he didn't hesitate to use up thousands of dragon immortal grass. The dragon immortal grass emitted a dense life force and took the initiative to drill into Yan Ao's body, saving some of Yi Qinghan's energy. Yi Qinghan leaned against the window and looked outside. The forest and birds flew in reverse. The scenery was pleasant. There was no emotion in his eyes. He looked calm, but his mind was in a mess. He couldn't think of anything and didn't want to think. The divine bird didn't want to disturb him. Silence was what Yi Qinghan needed the most. As long as he calmed down, Swanpatian wouldn't be so scary. However, once his mind was in a mess, Swanpatian would be an unsurpassable existence. His fate would forever be in the hands of Swanpatian, pushed by his invisible hands. The two carriage drivers took turns to hurry. After a day and a night, Yi Qinghan took the initiative to wake up the snow beast. After that, he didn't say anything. After passing through Snow Country and Divine Realm, they crossed the World River and entered the ultimate Martial Realm. They followed the Martial Peak mountain range and rushed towards the northwest. Along the way, many experts were following the carriage's route and rushing towards the northwest. Gradually, the further west they went, the more experts they met. The carriage's speed was faster than theirs, attracting the experts' attention. They wanted to snatch the carriage, but without the Supreme God, many of them didn't have the guts to do so. As time passed, they met more experts. The danger was spreading and killing intent was everywhere. Yi Qinghan looked out of the window without moving. He didn't even blink his eyes. "My lord, there's danger. Dark clouds are gathering in front and the killing intent is increasing. I'm afraid someone wants to snatch the carriage," one of the carriage drivers warned. "Don't worry, just move forward." Yi Qinghan's black eyes didn't have any human emotions. His voice was cold and emotionless. The two carriage drivers trembled when they heard his deep voice. They didn't dare to ask again and just rushed forward. The snow beasts galloped on the wild grass. The horse carriage did not touch the ground and did not jolt at all. Up ahead, two mountains converged to form a grand canyon that stretched on for an unknown length of time. The canyon was surrounded by powerful experts, all of whom were headed for the realm pagoda. Their cultivation levels were no lower than the giant gods, and there was no lack of paramount gods among them. Both sides of the canyon were filled with experts. They turned their heads to look at the carriage with greed in their eyes. The carriage slowed down. The 5 powerful snow beasts were as steady as Mount Tai. Their 4 limbs were powerful, and they moved forward step by step. The 2 middle-aged carriage owners were breathing rapidly. They had never seen so many powerful people. However, Yi Qinghan's eyes were filled with pity at the moment. These people seemed to be powerful, but once they went to the World Tower, they would be like ants or moth. The World Tower would be like a pit of fire. Few who went there would come back alive. The curtains swayed. Yi Qinghan could see them, but they couldn't see Yi Qinghan's face. Ding! Swish! The sword hummed and the saber flashed. Qi rushed to both sides of the canyon, shattering some stones into stone fragments that spread out. Many people couldn't wait any longer. They were waiting for someone to take the lead and rush forward. But no one was willing to be cannon fodder. After all, the person driving the carriage was definitely not ordinary. Yi Qinghan closed his eyes. He seemed to be in a daze, but his spirit controlled everything within 1,000 meters. Nothing could escape the control of his spirit. In this place, he was the true Divine Lord. Da-da-da! Yi Qinghan's slender fingers tapped on the wood outside the carriage window. It was as if he was warning those who were ready to take action not to act recklessly. Greed is like fire. Without control, it will set the prairie ablaze. Desire is like water. If not controlled, it will overflow. Ahead is a sea of bitterness, a pit of fire. I advise you not to go. Turn back. A majestic voice spread out, spreading to every corner. No one knew where the voice came from, and no one knew where it was going. The long queue didn't retreat because of the warning. Instead, evil thoughts grew in their hearts as they stared at the carriage. More and more experts revealed their hostility. Several divine senses locked onto the carriage. They were all experts at the pseudo-realm lord level. The Supreme Realm Lord wouldn't ride a carriage to the end of the 9 worlds. This person is obviously not a realm lord. A gloomy voice seemed to be reminding everyone. As long as one wasn't a realm lord, even a perfect realm existence would have to give way when surrounded by so many experts. When this voice spread out, everyone became even more restless. A bunch of idiots. The divine bird flipped over helplessly. Some people wanted to die, and it was impossible to stop them. Yi Qinghan wouldn't be so foolish to tell everyone that he was the Zhuo commander. It was even more impossible for him to say that he was the desolate lord. Right now, he could only pray that they wouldn't act recklessly. Otherwise, he would really start a massacre. Continue forward. Don't worry about them. Yi Qinghan whispered to the coachman outside the carriage. The two coachmen's hands were trembling. They knew that the person inside the carriage was the Zhuo commander, but they didn't know that the Zhuo commander was the desolate lord who was comparable to a realm lord. Giddy up! The snow beast's auras were unstable. Facing so many experts' murderous auras, it was already very good that they could continue forward. Da-da-da! The carriage was moving forward, but its speed had obviously decreased by a lot. Yi Qinghan opened his eyes. Cold light shot out in all directions. A faint pressure spread out to warn everyone. Xiao! A sword light tore through the void like lightning. It pierced from the peak of the mountain, wanting to kill the people inside the carriage. This move caused all the experts in the valley to move. Boom, boom, boom. Hua! Hundreds of sword shadows mixed with saber and staff shadows shot towards the carriage. The snow beast roared in anger and suddenly stopped. It wanted to run away in fear, but Yi Qinghan suppressed it with his intent, causing it to not dare to move. Swish, swish, swish. Thousands of blade lights rushed out from the carriage. They were all blade lights formed by Yi Qinghan's thoughts. They pierced through the void and shattered the first sword Dao expert who rushed over. Following that, anyone who rushed close to the carriage was killed by the blade light. No one was able to get within 10 meters of the carriage. A spherical barrier appeared outside the carriage. Boom! Some people were too fast and directly crashed into the barrier. However, they didn't break the barrier. Instead, they were injured by the recoil and flew back 100 meters. Hua! Bloody mist spread out, dyeing the valley red. Broken limbs and corpses were everywhere. There were only a few hundred people who attacked, but none of them survived. They were all killed in an instant. However, the strongest person who attacked was a supreme god. No fake realm lord attack. I've warned you. Greed is like water and fire. You can kill people without leaving a trace. Ahead of you is an endless hell. If you go, you will only die. Retreat. I won't kill you. Yi Qinghan gave a kind reminder. The paradise and the realm tower were obviously a trap. Once they went, they wouldn't be able to return. However, the others didn't think so. He wants to take the treasure for himself. Even the Supreme Realm Lord personally went to the Realm Tower to look for the treasure. Even the Realm Lord said that this treasure hunt has nothing to do with cultivation. It's related to luck. But he wants us to retreat. He deserves to die. Brothers, we can't forgive him. Crush him, and the carriage and snow beasts will be ours. The gloomy voice sounded again. However, no one knew who said it, and no one wanted to know. Yi Qinghan's lips curled up slightly. He stared at the back of a mountain. Others couldn't see it, but it didn't mean that he couldn't. Chapter 1542. That cold voice thought he was smart and wanted to reap the benefits, but he made the wrong decision and provoked the wrong person. A cold light flashed in Yi Qinghan's eyes. He let out a muffled groan and stretched his hand out of the window. With a twist of his hand, he grabbed a withered leaf. Using his thumb and middle finger, he flicked the leaf. The withered leaf was like a blade that shattered the void. Xiao-in. Hua hua hua. A leaf actually swept up a gale and sand, forming an arc in the valley and rushing towards the back of the mountain. Boom! Poochie! With a loud sound, the leaf actually pierced through the defense and pierced through the hidden expert's chest. Even his heart was shattered. A mournful scream resounded through the valley. a corpse fell from the sky and smashed into the ground. A fake sector lord couldn't even block a leaf from Yi Qinghan. Ant. You will always be an ant, destined to never amount to anything. Yi Qinghan's cold and emotionless voice resounded through the mountain, suppressing the restless people in the surroundings. No one dared to make a move. Hiss hiss hiss, is it a supreme sector lord? It should be. A fake sector lord was actually killed by a leaf. Other than a sector lord, who else can do this? Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, and looked at the carriage in horror as they retreated. Disparity, this was the true disparity. If one wasn't a sector overlord, the disparity between him and Yi Qinghan was more than 1,000 miles. In terms of individual combat strength, if one wasn't a sector overlord, other than Yi Qinghan who possessed the soul of a sector overlord, his physique was monstrous, and his combat strength was monstrous. No one could contend against a true sector overlord. Perhaps only Gu Qingyu and Jiang Jingtian could join forces against a sector overlord. Continue forward, Yi Qinghan said calmly. At this moment, the coachman finally knew how terrifying the person in the carriage was. He became excited and drove the carriage out of the valley. The news of a carriage that could not be provoked quickly spread, allowing Yi Qinghan to relax a little, but the speed of the spread was obviously not as fast as the speed of the carriage. After speeding out of the ultimate martial realm, there were some reckless people who wanted to snatch the carriage, but were mercilessly killed by Yi Qinghan. The coachman was already used to the constant killing and intimidation. He was already used to it and sped along. After leaving the ultimate martial realm and entering the supreme realm, Yi Qinghan realized that he had underestimated the greed of humans. Countless people were rushing towards the realm of divine martial arts along the border. Their destination was very clear. It was definitely the Realm Tower, the end of the 9 worlds. This calculating heaven breaker is a madman. How many people does he have to kill before he is satisfied? The divine bird couldn't help but say helplessly as it looked through the window at the experts all over the mountains and plains. They would fight with each other just because of a disagreement. At that realm, ordinary people are really ants, including the paramount gods and even the fake realm masters. They don't care about them at all. Only when they reach the human king realm do they feel that they are experts. The life and death of these people are like a swarm of locusts to them. It doesn't matter how many of them die, because when their world is able to give birth to life, there will be as many of them as they want. Yi Qinghan said in a low voice. But they can't be so deranged as to kill the natives of this world like ants. The divine bird said angrily. Yi Qinghan looked at the experts all over the mountains and plains. Sometimes they would step on the sky and sometimes they would land to rest. He said expressionlessly, to the realm masters, the natives are the same as the creatures in their own world. They only have value. Time flew by. Year after year, they traveled through the 3 great worlds and wasted many years. But to Yi Qinghan and the other divine priests, it was just the time it took for them to open their eyes and enter seclusion. They had traveled for 10 years in a row. Even if the coachman took turns to rest every 10 days, it was still somewhat unbearable. The snow beasts were also somewhat tired, but more than that, they were tired of traveling day after day. Yi Qinghan also noticed this, so he asked the coachman, "How much longer until we can leave the Supreme Realm and enter the Divine Martial Realm?" "About half a month, my lord." The coachman immediately replied. "When we reach the next big city, we will rest for a few days before continuing," Yi Qinghan said calmly. Hearing that Yi Qinghan wanted to rest, even the snow beasts roared. After traveling for so many years, even the coachman felt irritated. "Go, go, go!" The coachman became excited. He drove the carriage into the distance. Yi Qinghan put Yen Ao into the Great Wastelands Monument, but he had a lot of level 12 dragon immortal grass on him. Level 11 dragon immortal grass covered the sky. In order to extend Yen Ao's life, He had bet everything he had. A few tens of thousands of miles ahead was a city. It wasn't big, but it wasn't small either. Because of the appearance of the heaven-defying divine medicine, this place was extraordinarily lively. Countless people passed by. Even if 1% of the people entered the city, it was still a sea of people. The carriage entered the city, and they found a horse carriage company. Yi Qinghan gave some instructions, and then gave the two coachmen some resources and realm stones, allowing them to move freely. They just had to gather at the city gate 3 days later. Yi Qinghan wore a black cloak and covered his face tightly. He quickly stepped into the city. In the center of the city there was a sea of people. Men and women, there were all kinds of people. Experts were as common as clouds. They were all preparing to enter the paradise to search for the peach of immortality. Yi Qinghan walked on the streets aimlessly. He only wanted the coachmen and snow beasts to rest. He didn't want to enter the city at all. But since he was here, it was better to gather some information. There were inns and shops on both sides of the street. There were all kinds of inns and shops. There were many supreme treasures. In order to continue their journey, most people took out their supreme treasures to sell in exchange for useful things. Yi Qinghan looked around. There were very few things that were useful to him. They wouldn't appear here. The divine bird also had a lazy look. Let's go to the inns and restaurants. Maybe we can get some useful information. Yi Qinghan raised his head and looked at a restaurant. It was very luxurious and huge. It could accommodate thousands of people. Those who could enter were either rich or respectable. Therefore, it wasn't crowded. Yi Qinghan brought the divine bird up to the second floor quickly. He found a seat by the window and sat down. He could hear the discussions in the restaurant as well as the sounds on the street. Sure enough, the people in the restaurant were all talking about the heaven-defying divine medicine, the peach of immortality, and the realm's soul grass. I heard that many experts have died in the front, and there is no lack of pseudo-sector lords. However, no one has been able to enter the blessed lands or grotto heavens, and no one has been able to reach the top of the realm tower. Many people have been scared out of their wits and have withdrawn from the competition. They are all watching the show from the outside, waiting for someone to successfully enter the blessed lands and grotto heavens. Isn't that so? The outside of the paradise is even scarier than the inside. Those people are eyeing it covetously. Even if they get the supreme treasures, they won't be able to keep them if their cultivation isn't high enough. There were 7 or 8 people at a table. They were all men and women. Their voices weren't low. Perhaps they were doing it on purpose to scare the crowd, or perhaps they were showing off how well-informed they were. Yi Qinghan lowered his head and sipped his tea. He casually ordered a few dishes and drank alone. He listened carefully to the news of others. Chapter 1543. Inside the city, outside the restaurant, there were many people walking in groups of 3 to 5. Most of them were adventurers, but there were also mercenaries. Yi Qinghan sat by the window on the second floor and listened to the news from the crowd. He heard quite a bit of news that 2 of the 4 world lords had already appeared in the blessed lands and grotto heavens. They were righteous heaven god lord and night demon god king. Night Demon God King took action and entered the blessed lands and grotto heavens to take the test. It was proven once again that what mattered in the paradise was luck and not strength. This made everyone even more excited. Righteous Heaven Divine Lord has spread the news. Whoever can bring out the peach of immortality from the paradise will be accepted as a direct disciple. Within 10,000 years, that person will be nurtured to pseudo-sector lord level. Another piece of news was spread. Yi Qinghan sneered. Since the peach of immortality was a heaven-defying divine herb, he actually wanted to take it away by accepting a disciple. This person was indeed as stingy and treacherous as before. However, after so long, no one had entered the paradise. Instead, many people had died and were buried in the world pagoda and paradise. Not even their corpses were left. This made people excited and fearful. The paradise and world pagoda were like heaven and hell in a single thought. Right at this moment, a large group of people galloped in from outside the city. Yi Qinghan glanced at them indifferently. There were a total of 13 people. 10 of them were mercenaries, and the remaining was a couple. They were both middle-aged and looked extremely wealthy. Their aura was extraordinary. The last one was a sickly young man. Looking from afar, his face was pale as though he lacked vitality. He didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. His footsteps were light and he couldn't even stand properly. However, he was holding a sword in his hand, which made people feel funny. However, Yi Qinghan discovered that this 17 or 18-year-old boy had a surge of power that was about to erupt. However, it was too soft and lacked yang qi. This made him unable to harmonize his yin and yang qi. Naturally, he couldn't use his true strength. If he could harmonize his yin and yang qi, he would definitely be able to unleash the strength of a pseudo-sector lord. It was unimaginable. This boy didn't look old and didn't seem like someone who had lived for thousands or even tens of thousands of years. To have such strength, he was probably born with it. The heavens were fair. Giving him heaven-defying strength, but not being able to use it wasn't a good thing for him. The group of people quickly entered the restaurant. Da-da-da. The 13 of them went up to the second floor together. Although they were travel-worn, they didn't look tired at all. Their movements were neat and orderly as they surrounded the couple and the boy. No one could get close to them. Yi Qinghan stared at the group of mercenaries. His brows twitched as he muttered to himself, "Not mercenaries, they are all pseudo-sector lord beginner stage. Where did they come from?" Their clothes were very simple, but their every word and action showed that they were not ordinary. Their green clothes and hemp clothes gave them the feeling of royalty. They have something good on them. The divine bird raised its head. It wasn't interested in their identities, but it was interested in the things they had. The restaurant quietened down. Even the fake sector lords didn't say anything, all staring at this group of people. The 5 of them shared a table, but there were only 2 tables on the second floor. It wasn't enough. The 3 guards quietly stood behind the couple and the boy. They didn't move at all and seemed more like servants instead of fake world overlords. However, the couple was very polite to the guards behind them. They stood up and said, "Sit down." The 3 guards were stunned. Before they could stop them, the couple pulled the boy to Yi Qinghan's table and said politely, "Dao friend, are you willing to share a table with us?" "Third master, madam, we can't." The 10 guards suddenly stood up. The leading middle-aged man retracted his aura and blocked in front of the couple. He said seriously, "Us brothers don't need to sit. Third master and madam, please sit." After speaking, the man stared at Yi Qinghan. His brows twitched. He actually couldn't see through Yi Qinghan's strength. Especially since Yi Qinghan was covered in a black robe, even his face was half covered. He didn't even raise his head when he saw Third Master and his family coming over. He probably wasn't a good person. Hence, he didn't want Third Master and Madam and Young Master to sit down. "It's fine. We are tired from the journey. It's time to rest." Third Master was cultured and refined. He looked at Yi Qinghan warmly and once again cupped his fists and said, "Fellow Taoist, when you go out, you have to rely on your friends. We really don't have any more tables. Since you are alone, can you give us half a table? We definitely won't disturb you. Sit." Yi Qinghan didn't say much. He didn't even raise his eyes. The boy smiled faintly and bowed, "Thank you, senior." Third Master said to the leader of the guards, "Brother Fu Xing, please take a seat. This mister won't do anything bad to us." But the man called Fu Xing hesitated. He was really worried about Yi Qinghan. Third Master smiled and pointed at the god bird lying on the table. This parrot should be a spirit-devouring god parrot from the desolate era. Although it is a little despicable, its nature isn't bad. Naturally, it wouldn't attack its master for no reason. Brother Fuxing, please listen to me. We have traveled for so long. If we don't rest soon, we would really be in danger if someone attacked us. PFF. The god bird jumped up and stared angrily at Third Master. It really wanted to scratch a flower out of Third Master's face. Yi Qinghan smiled. He lowered his head and took a sip. He didn't say anything. Godbird, please don't blame me. This old man has misspoken. Third Master hurriedly smiled and apologized. The three of them sat down quietly. Fuxing then led the others to sit down. However, his eyes never left Yi Qinghan. As long as Yi Qinghan made any overboard actions, they would definitely act immediately. After a short period of silence, the restaurant slowly returned to its noisy state. Yi Qinghan glanced at the family of three in front of him. Third Master and his wife seemed to be immortal and their cultivation had reached the pseudo-world lord level. The woman didn't look especially beautiful, but she was extremely charming. Even her green robes couldn't hide her outstanding beauty. The boy was indeed young. He should have a child when he was old. However, he couldn't use the energy in his body. As parents, they brought him to the paradise to search for immortal peaches and change his fate. From Fuxing's attitude, this Third Master should have come from a hidden clan or a great power. He was definitely not simple. Yi Qinghan slightly raised his head and looked at the boy. He was very interested. He didn't know what the energy in his body was and where it came from. He then asked, "Little boy, can you extend your arm for me to check?" Third Master and Third Madam were stunned. They looked at Yi Qinghan. They could only see half of his face and a pair of black hole-like eyes. There were no emotions in his eyes. It was like a pool of stagnant water without any fluctuations. The boy looked at his parent. After getting permission, he slowly placed the sword on the table. He extended his right hand and passed it to Yi Qinghan. Yi Qinghan placed his hand on the boy's right wrist. He closed his eyes and sensed. A strand of divine sense slowly entered the boy's blood vessels and extended all the way to his dantian. However, he discovered that there was actually another energy storage space in his dantian. There was boundless yin qi inside that had almost condensed into a solid state. However, there wasn't any yang qi at all. Chapter 1544. The youth's uniqueness had never been seen before. Even someone as knowledgeable as Yi Qinghan had never seen anything like this before. The amount of energy in the youth's body was enough to destroy half the world, but he couldn't even release a single strand of it. Is the energy in the dantian innate or acquired? Yi Qinghan lowered his voice and asked hoarsely. Senior, it's innate. It's always been there. The energy I cultivate will also be neutralized by it, causing the energy in my body to become chaotic and my blood to become unstable. The youth immediately replied expectantly. Facing Yi Qinghan, who he didn't know, he also had some expectations. It seemed like he had been stifled by this powerful yet mentally retarded physique. He was constantly trying to adjust himself. Third Grandpa looked at Yi Qinghan expectantly. This strange illness wasn't something that had happened in a day or two. He had asked so many people for help and found so many godly doctors, but none of them were able to overcome it. He clearly didn't want his only son to be a trash that couldn't cultivate. Dao friend, do you have a way? As long as you can cure my son, Dao friend can ask for anything you want. Third Grandpa asked excitedly. Yi Qinghan let go of the youth's arm and shook his head. The energy in his body is somewhat evil and lacks the power of yang. Yin and yang cannot be harmonized, and the yin energy is too viscous. It has formed a solid state and is blocked in the dantian, unable to form a connection. It might be a good thing that he can't use it. Otherwise, his soul wouldn't be able to withstand the impact of the evil energy. After Yi Qinghan finished speaking, he thought for a long time. He didn't know how to dilute the viscous evil energy and achieve the harmonization of yin and yang. Unless he could reach the Sector Lord realm and directly transfer his Sector Lord level fire energy into the youth's body, then spend a large amount of energy to help him harmonize yin and yang. Perhaps there would be an 80% chance of success. However, Yi Qinghan wasn't a kind person. He wouldn't sacrifice himself for others. I also have no way to help him harmonize yin and yang. Yi Qinghan let go of the youth's arm and said calmly. Third Grandpa's expression dimmed. His rekindled hope was once again shattered. Third Master's wife also sighed. She held the young man's wrist and asked, Sir, I wonder if the heaven-defying peach of immortality has a chance of curing him? Yi Qinghan was silent for a moment before replying. The peach of immortality contains more vitality than yang energy. It can save a dying person, but it can't save your son. However, with the peach of immortality, you can exchange it for a treasure to heal him. What is it? San Yi and his wife asked at the same time. Sector Lord level fire source. Yi Qinghan said indifferently. San Yi couldn't help sucking in a breath of cold air. There weren't many people who could control the fire origin, and there were even fewer Sector Lords. As far as he knew, none of the 4 Sector Lords had controlled the fire origin. What a pity! Although my son can't cultivate, his luck is really good. He might be able to obtain the peach of immortality. However, a Sector Lord level fire origin is even rarer than the peach of immortality. Until now, we have never heard of anyone who could control the fire origin and cultivate it to the Sector Lord level. Third Madam said helplessly. Yi Qinghan raised his eyebrows. He looked at the youth and asked, How good is his luck? This is my son's talent. He can find treasures wherever he goes. Moreover, their grades aren't low. His luck has never dissipated since he was young. San Yi said seriously. The divine bird looked at the youth in a daze. It felt that this fellow was even more awesome than itself. It was known as the divine bird that could search for treasures under the heavens. However, this fella could actually find treasures wherever he went. How heaven-defying was this? The most important factor in the Paradise's test was luck. If the youth had heaven-defying luck, there was no harm in cooperating. Yi Qinghan's eyes flashed. He had an idea. Transferring his fire origin to the youth in exchange for Yen Ao's life was a good deal. If you guys can obtain the peach of immortality, I can help him mediate the balance of yin and yang. Yi Qinghan said with certainty. Are you serious? San Yi looked at Yi Qinghan doubtfully. He would definitely be suspicious. If the person in front of him was a Sector Lord, wouldn't that mean that there was an unknown Sector Lord in the world? Yes. Yi Qinghan narrowed his eyes and stared at San Yi. Flames flickered in his eyes. It was very clear that he could use the fire origin and had reached the point of perfection. Dao friend. Senior is. San Ye's attitude changed greatly. To be able to control the flames in his eyes without hurting himself, it was obvious that his fire origin had reached the Great Circle. To be able to reach this stage, even if he wasn't a Sector Lord, he was at least a Great Circle expert or even a mortal king. It's good that you know. Don't spread it. Yi Qinghan transmitted his voice coldly. San Ye's eyes were filled with shock. He lowered his head and didn't say anything. Even his fingers were trembling. Fu Xing noticed that something was wrong with San Yi. A short knife appeared in his hand, and his hand was already on the hilt of the knife. The other 9 people held their weapons with their right hands at the same time. Killing intent filled the air, and the restaurant immediately fell into a dead silence. Even the sound of breathing could be heard clearly. Brother Fu Xing, this Dao friend has a chance of curing Xian Zhe. I am happy. You guys relax and have a good rest. San Yi quickly explained. When Fu Xing heard this, He was also very surprised. He quickly nodded to Yi Qinghan to express his apology and put down the knife in his hand. The killing intent in the restaurant dissipated and became lively again. Someone has obtained the peach of immortality. The front line is in chaos. Many people participated in the fight. A large number of experts were killed by Divine Lord Jingtian. That guy is King Lucky and has been accepted by Divine Lord Jingtian as his last disciple. A piece of news exploded behind them. The entire restaurant fell into a frenzy. Many people were skeptical about the heaven-defying divine medicine. Now that it really appeared, even Yi Qinghan was shocked, let alone these ants. The happiest person was San Yi. He was extremely excited. He wasn't afraid that he couldn't obtain the peach of immortality. He was afraid that the so-called peach of immortality was fabricated by others. Yi Qinghan clenched his fist. There was finally some life in his eyes. Are we leaving now? 2 more realms and we will reach our destination. The divine bird was extremely excited. It always felt that paradise couldn't stop its footstep. When the time came, it would dig out the entire peach of immortality. Just thinking about this made it drool. It was even more excited than Yi Qinghan. No rush. We will rest for 3 days. The rest of the journey will be boring. There will be no rest. Yi Qinghan said calmly. Now, the 2 coachmen were relaxing in the city. It didn't matter what method was used. As long as they were excited, it was enough. Yi Qinghan gave them enough resources and world stones. It was enough for them to squander for a while. When San Yi heard that Yi Qinghan wanted to rest for 3 days, he said to Fu Xing, "Brother Fu Xing, let's rest together with this fellow Taoist. When the time comes, we will leave together." Yi Qinghan didn't refuse. The young man's luck was his guarantee. If he and the divine bird couldn't obtain the peach of immortality, he would be their last hope. Even if there was only the slightest bit of hope, he wouldn't give up. The group of people rested in this inn for 3 days. Then, the people in the inn swarmed out and rushed towards the divine martial realm. Because there was definite news, no one could hold back their emotions. 3 days passed by in a flash. Yi Qinghan appeared at the city gate with a cloak covering his body. San Yi and the others followed behind Yi Qinghan. When the coachman saw Yi Qinghan, he immediately waved his hand and called out. Chapter 1545. The 2 coachmen's faces were flushed red as they pulled the snow beast carriage. It seemed like they had enjoyed themselves quite well these past 3 days. Yi Qinghan brought a group of people and appeared near the carriage. He waved his hand and said, "This child will follow me. You guys cannot sit in the carriage. You must keep up with the speed. If you really can't, we'll meet up at the paradise." The 3rd master's wife was a little worried. After all, this was the first time she had met Yi Qinghan, and they had not interacted much. How could she leave her son, who could not fight, to someone else? Fu Xing and the rest hurriedly tried to stop them, unwilling to hand Xian Zhe over to Yi Qinghan. However, the 3rd master was an intelligent person. He knew that Yi Qinghan was a terrifying existence. If he really wanted to harm Xian Zhe, it would be useless even if they all attacked together. Thus, he said straightforwardly, "Yi Qinghan trusts the esteemed lord. My son cannot use his godforce, so I ask the esteemed lord to take care of him." Xian Zhe looked at Yi Qinghan and Madame Xian reluctantly. He had not left his parents' side for so many years. To him, Yi Qinghan was like a complete stranger. "Get on the carriage." Yi Qinghan did not give him any time to think as he said coldly. Xian Zhe had no choice but to get on the carriage. Yi Qinghan was just about to get on the carriage when he was stopped by a haughty voice. "Hold on, this young master has taken a liking to this carriage. Leave it behind." A lazy voice rang out from within the city. It was so arrogant that it made people want to slap it a few times. Yi Qinghan slowly turned his head and looked at the group of people walking out of the city. With a single glance, he could tell that they were the young masters of some large family. The mercenaries beside them looked more like mountain bandits. Their faces were covered with thick beards, but their strength was not weak either. There were 3 fake world lords, and the rest were all paramount god. The young master in the middle had a pretty good cultivation base. Although he looked very young, he was already a paramount god. He could be considered a genius. The young master was dressed in luxurious robes. His eyes were sinister and his lips were thin. He looked somewhat sinister, and his eyes flashed with a sharp light. Yi Qinghan looked at the group of people and hurriedly said, "Esteemed lord, you can leave first. Leave these people to me." "Yes," Yi Qinghan replied in a low voice. He stepped onto the carriage and reminded coldly, "If you really can't do it, then just kill them all." "Stop! Who allowed you to leave? Get the hell down here!" The nefarious young man scolded coldly again. However, Yi Qinghan ignored them and said to the coachman, "Now move forward as fast as you can. You must reach the end of the 9 realms sky in the shortest time possible." "Hiya!" The coachman quickly drove the snow beast into the sky. "You're courting death." That hedonistic young master waved his hand, and a burly man behind him pulled out his sword and rushed towards the carriage. Sword chi filled the air, and it was as fast as lightning. Boom! A figure dashed out from behind Mystic Three's back, instantly killing him with a single slash. There was only a bloody hole in the corpse, which had pierced right through his head. The speed of the slash was so fast that not even a drop of blood could be seen. "Kill them all!" Mystic Three's attitude turned cold as he snorted coldly. The 9 experts behind him all made their move. Shio, 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 10 streaks of sword light blotted out the sky and covered the earth. There was no aftershock, nor was there any large-scale damage. In the blink of an eye, the group of people were all killed. Only that so-called young master was left. His legs trembled as he knelt down. Pu Ci. Fu Xing did not hesitate to pierce through his head, not giving him a chance to beg for mercy. Fu Xing and this group of people were definitely not ordinary people. Their battle prowess was terrifying, and their control over their strength had reached the pinnacle. They were definitely not ordinary people. Yet, they were willing to be Mystic Three's bodyguards. This change in attitude showed that they had an extraordinary background. However, Yi Qinghan was not interested in this group of people. Taking Xian Zhe away was only a transaction. If Xian Zhe could enter the paradise, it would save him some trouble. At the very least, there would be no need to leave Yan Ao outside. That was a risk he was unwilling to take. The snow beasts and the carriage streaked across the sky like lightning. This time, they did not rotate 5 snow beasts a day. Instead, they would wait until the snow beasts were exhausted before changing. Inside the carriage, Xian Zhe looked at Yi Qinghan's loose black robe. He wanted to say something, but did not dare to. He felt that Yi Qinghan was like a ferocious and cruel beast. Once he erupted, he would destroy the heavens and the earth. Yi Qinghan closed his eyes and leaned against the iron plate, waiting quietly. In a day's time, they had entered the divine martial realm. They did not change snow beasts at all. On the 4th day, after crossing millions of li, Yi Qinghan finally changed snow beasts. While Yi Qinghan was still rushing, the paradise was overcrowded. There were countless experts, and even the weakest of them was a giant god. At the end of the 9 worlds sky, there were isolated mountains everywhere. They were barren and desolate. Not even a blade of grass grew there. Looking to the west, there was the world barrier. It formed a wall that reached the sky. There was only one pagoda embedded in the wall. It had 9 floors and was incomparably majestic. It was only a few hundred li away from the paradise. There were god shrines everywhere. powerful god shrines were looking at the paradise. Most of the people wanted to enter the paradise, but not many of them were interested in the boundary pagoda. That was because most of the people who dared to enter the boundary pagoda would not be able to come out. They would all be crushed into a bloody mist. However, the test of the Blessed Land's paradise was not that scary. Out of 10 people who entered, at most 3 or 4 would die, while the rest would be seriously injured. Very few people could come out unscathed. After so many years, only one person had entered the Blessed Land's paradise and took a peach of immortality. Before he could take a second peach, he was teleported out of the Blessed Land's paradise. That person was the young man standing beside Divine Lord Righteous Sky. He had a proud face and great fortune. His cultivation had reached the peak paramount god realm. He was definitely a genius among geniuses. No one knew what kind of treasure was hidden in the paradise. Since the young man was standing beside Divine Lord Righteous Sky, no one dared to approach him. They could only hope that the next lucky person would be themselves. Unfortunately, those who entered the paradise were either dead or injured. Apart from one person who obtained the opportunity, no one else could enter. Realm lords could not suppress the clamor here. They formed groups of 3 to 5, and some even formed a large group of mercenaries. Hundreds of fake realm lords teamed up to compete with the realm lords for the heaven-defying divine medicine. The next person to enter the paradise might not necessarily be taken away by the realm lord. The fake realm lords also wanted a share of the loot. Entering the blessed lands, grotto heavens, and the world pagoda was simply too dangerous. Therefore, the truly powerful experts had yet to enter the trials. Instead, they were waiting for the paramount gods and giant gods to enter. Men die in pursuit of wealth, just as birds die in pursuit of food. Therefore, there was an endless stream of people entering the world pagoda and blessed lands, grotto heavens. At least several hundred people died every day, but that did not scare them away. They knew that they were like moths flying into a flame, but they still wanted to become people with heaven-defying fortune. Greed was like fire, and without control, it would set the prairie ablaze. Desire was like water, and without control, it would overflow to the heavens. Just as Yi Qinghan said, these people's greed was like fire and water. They would not even know how they died. Chapter 1546. After devouring countless lives in the World Tower, those crazy adventurers finally lost their courage and set their sights on the peach of immortality. For more than 20 years, Yi Qinghan didn't appear, but Swan Patian wasn't worried, because he knew Yi Qinghan's whereabouts like the back of his hand. The carriage's flight path was in his line of sight. At this moment, Yi Qinghan had already entered the six-beast world. Swan Patian put away the copper coin and disappeared. Time flew by and another 3 years passed. The number of people outside the paradise didn't decrease, but increased by a lot. On this day, it was bustling again because the peach of immortality had appeared. Auspicious light soared into the sky, and immortal chi lingered in the air. A figure was teleported out, and as soon as he appeared, a vision appeared in the sky. 4 realm lords surrounded the middle-aged man who had obtained the peach of immortality. The aura of the 4 realm lords shook the sky, and the people around didn't dare to move. The man who had obtained the peach of immortality was terrified. Although he was a paramount god, he was still an ant in front of a realm lord. If you're willing to give the peach of immortality to me, not only will I accept you as my last disciple, but I'll also grant you a large territory and make you an emperor. The night demon god king stared at the peach of immortality in the man's hand. The peach of immortality was about the size of 2 fists, filled with life and immortal chi. The 4 realm lords didn't think of fighting for it, and let the middle-aged man choose freely. What the night demon god king can give you, I can give you too, the other 3 realm lords said at the same time. The middle-aged man wasn't holding a heaven-defying divine medicine, but a hot potato. However, the others also wanted this hot potato. Just as the middle-aged man was hesitating, a carriage came through the sky and landed on a mountain peak. A sharp gaze looked down at the mountains and rivers, and the world was silent. The snow beast roared, and its aura soared into the sky. The four realm lords' eyes flashed, and they quickly guessed who was in the carriage. However, they restrained themselves and didn't join forces because they didn't have the confidence to kill the desolate lord. Once they alerted the desolate lord, all their efforts would be for naught. Wait for the right time. If he doesn't enter the paradise, don't make a move. A deep voice exploded in the sea of consciousness of the four sector lords, causing them to retract their killing intent and stare at the man holding the immortal peach. The man looked at the restless experts around him and didn't dare to hesitate. He chose Supreme Divine Marshal and gave the peach of immortality to him. Supreme Divine Marshal was overjoyed. He put away the peach of immortality and waited for Yi Qin Han to make his move. Many people stared at the carriage in shock. They didn't know who the person in the carriage was. He was actually so arrogant, looking down on everyone. Even the Realm Lord didn't berate him. The carriage stopped at the peak of the mountain for a long time, but no one came out, which aroused everyone's curiosity. Swish! A beam of light streaked across the sky. 13 experts wearing black cloaks appeared in front of everyone's eyes. They stepped on a group of heroes and flew through the sky. They appeared at the entrance of the paradise and forcibly occupied the passageway. Roar! 11 of the 13 erupted with power, all of them having the aura of a fake world overlord. They drew their swords, intimidating everyone. Scram! A middle-aged man released his aura and pointed his sword at the people behind him, forcing them to retreat. This group was even more tyrannical than the appearance of the carriage. F***K, you guys are too tyrannical. Don't you know what it means to line up? Do you guys still have the overlords in your eyes? The experts standing at the back cursed angrily. That's right. The Supreme Realm Lord is still here. He won't allow you to behave so atrociously. Scram to the back and line up. The commotion was extremely loud and the cursing continued. There were even some mercenary groups who couldn't take it anymore and drew their swords, wanting to kill this group of people. The black-robed man escorted 2 people and didn't care about the crowd. The strongest guard looked at the 4 sector lords and asked calmly, "Lords, do we need to line up?" God Lord Jingtian and the others frowned. They couldn't see through the origins of this group of people. The 11 guards who erupted with auras actually came from the same faction. Moreover, they were all fake world overlords. Such a power, even their royal family wouldn't be able to nurture them. Fake world overlords were supreme elders in any power. Now that they were actually guards, one couldn't help but suspect their origins. No need. God Lord Jingtian pondered for a moment. He didn't want to offend these people of unknown origins, and even more didn't want to have a conflict with them and let the desolate lord have his way. At this moment everyone calmed down. Even the sector lords had compromised, let alone them. Although they were dissatisfied, they couldn't do anything. The 4 sector lords glanced at the carriage and could clearly sense that the desolate lord was inside. They didn't move and retracted their auras, quietly waiting for this group of experts to enter the test. The 2 people escorted by the 11 wore cloaks and covered their bodies tightly. They stepped towards the entrance of the blessed land. There was a flowing light screen and the 7-colored light was dazzling. If one stepped in, they would either die or be injured. After so many years, there were hundreds of people training every day. However, only 2 people succeeded. One could imagine how dangerous it was inside. The 2 walked in the same pace and quickly approached the entrance. Just as they were about to step into the blessed land, a figure suddenly appeared above the entrance. It was Swan Patian. "Stop! Take off your cloaks!" Swan Patian coldly said. The leader of the guards, pulled out his sword and slashed towards Swan Patian. However, the sword chi actually passed through Swan Patian's body. The illusory figure dissipated and returned to normal after a moment. It was just a projection. However, it was so lifelike that it gave people an unsurpassable pressure. Shwa. The 11 guards acted at the same time and protected the 2 people as they stared at Swan Patian. So it's divine mathematician Swan Patian. Since you're here, can't you calculate my identity? A dignified voice resounded through the clouds. The leader of the guards looked up at the projection as if he could see through the illusions and see the essence. Swan Patian was stunned. He felt that this person could really see his real body through the projection. That kind of gaze was too sharp. As Swan Patian's figure dissipated, no longer obstructing them. At this moment, even the 4 sector lords were shocked. Even Swan Patian had to retreat. Just who were these people? Seeing Swan Patian retreat, the leader of the guards said with a hoarse voice, "Go in. If there's any danger, don't force yourself. Even if you can't get the peach of immortality, I can still let you live for a long time." The 2 people in front of him started walking again. Their silhouettes flashed and disappeared, disappearing into the paradise. The 11 guards held their divine swords and cleared the area 10 meters around the entrance. No one dared to get close. Even the sector lords took a few steps back to make space for them. The 11 of them were as still as mountains. They didn't say anything and just quietly waited for the result. Chapter 1547. Outside the Blessed Land's grotto heaven, most of the people were staring at the 11 caped guards, but the 4 sector lords and Swan Patian were mostly staring at the carriage. The powerful aura was still in the carriage, which meant that the desolate lord was still inside, so they were not worried. This old man wants to defeat them one by one. Don't ruin this old man's plan. Otherwise, you won't be able to kill the desolate lord. It was unknown where Swan Patian's body was, but his voice accurately transmitted into the 4 sector lords' minds. The 4 sector lords were breathing steadily. They looked like they were staring at the paradise, but they were actually staring at the carriage. If you want to kill the desolate lord, you have to wait for him to separate from his clone. Kill the clone first, then kill the main body. Otherwise, you won't succeed. Swan Patian lightly reminded. Swan Patian calmed the sector lords down and did not disturb Yi Qinghan in the carriage. The stars moved and the space changed. The blessed land and heavenly grotto heaven were in an independent space. After crossing that light screen, everything changed. The 2 black-clothed men took off their cloaks. They were Yi Qinghan and Xianzhe. The 2 looked at each other and smiled. Next, we will rely on our own abilities. If you can bring the immortal peach out, I will give you a sector lord level fire type origin. I will give you a lifetime of transcendence. If you are unlucky and die here, you can't blame anyone. Yi Qinghan calmly said. Senior, don't worry. I believe my luck is very good. Xianzhe solemnly said. Yi Qinghan looked ahead and saw a deep tunnel. After walking for a few hundred meters, it opened up in all directions. If he chose the wrong path, he would die. If he chose the right path, he would find the peach of immortality. As expected, the paradise didn't rely on strength, but on luck. Out of 100 paths, only 1 was correct. 50% were dead ends. Entering would lead to certain death. The remaining 40% were filled with danger. However, Yi Qinghan didn't feel that it was so easy to choose the right path. Otherwise, after so many years, how could only 2 people obtain the immortal peach? Swan Patian could enter. He shouldn't rely on luck alone. There should be a flaw. Yi Qinghan arrived at the fork in the road. He looked at the identical entrance and paced back and forth. He could not tell which path led to the exit. Xianzhe stared at the passageway and felt quite confused. He had relied on fate and could not use any of his strength. He looked around and pointed at a passageway as he said, "Senior, I'll choose this passageway. Do you want to follow me?" Yi Qinghan frowned and asked, "Why did you choose this path?" Xian Zhe shrugged and replied indifferently, "I don't know either. All the entrances are the same." I guess most of the paths lead to the blessed lands and grotto heavens, but there will be different levels of danger along the way. Anyway, I don't have much strength, so I'm just guessing blindly based on luck. Maybe I'll succeed. Divine Bird, what do you think? Yi Qinghan looked at the divine bird on his shoulder and asked tentatively. Since his luck is so good, let's just follow him. The divine bird was extremely excited. It wanted nothing more than to dive into the blessed land and heavenly grotto heaven right now to pull out the immortal peach tree and transplant it. Yi Qinghan did not say anything else. It was all about luck this time. "Let's go," Yi Qinghan said in a low voice. Xian Zhe took a deep breath and held his divine sword as he stepped towards the passageway he had pointed at. But before he reached the entrance, he changed direction and entered a passageway on the side. Hey, isn't that the one on the side?" The divine bird hurriedly called out. "Whatever. It's just a random passageway, so I'll just go in," Xian Zhe said indifferently. Yi Qinghan and the divine bird rolled their eyes at the same time. This was a true gamble of luck. Tap, tap, tap. Yi Qinghan followed Xian Zhe into the passageway. Their footsteps echoed on the stone walls, producing a crisp sound. But there were different paths in the passageway, forcing them to choose again. Yi Qinghan inexplicably trusted Xian Zhe and kept following him. After walking for about half a day, they appeared in a misty mountain. The sound of birds chirping could be heard, and occasionally, there would be a low roar of a beast. But they did not know what kind of creature it was. Even a sector lord was stopped when he entered this place for the test. The creatures here are probably not something the creatures of the outside world can fight against. "Come close to me," Yi Qinghan said calmly. Shua, Yi Qinghan held his sword and drew a mark at the foot of the mountain. Then, he led Xian Zhe into the mist. Although the mist was not poisonous, it could block divine senses. Even Yi Qinghan's soul could not see the depths or where the path was. Hua hua hua. The dried leaves produced a crisp sound. Xian Zhe pulled Yi Qinghan's clothes and carefully advanced. After walking for a long time, the two walked out of the mist. But when they looked up, they realized that they were still in the same spot, but the exit of the cave had disappeared, because the mark was still there. Hiss hiss hiss. Yi Qinghan sucked in a breath of cold air. He could not have mistaken the mark he drew, but where was the entrance? He had walked for so long, how could he have returned to the original path? How could a sector lord's soul not be able to distinguish the direction? "It's haunted," the divine bird shouted. "It's not haunted. This should be an 8 trigrams formation. No matter where we go, the final destination will be here. Also, the path back has disappeared." "This only means that we have walked into a dead end," Yi Qinghan said with certainty. Xian Zhe scratched his head, feeling a little embarrassed. He had always been extremely lucky and did whatever he wanted. His luck had always followed him. Why did it not work this time? There were cliffs and precipitous cliff. There was no climbing point and the pressure above was extremely high. They could not even fly. If they could not find a way out, they would definitely die here. Yi Qinghan walked again, but this time, he left Zhong Kuang at the original spot. But he still came back. With Zhong Kuang, it was even more impossible for him to get the place wrong. This meant that he was indeed walking in circles. "Xian Zhe, you go first this time. I will follow you." Yi Qinghan raised his eyebrows and said while pulling out Zhong Kuang. "Oh." Xian Zhe was very embarrassed. He held the divine sword and walked deeper into the mist. He did not know where he was going. Yi Qinghan followed Xian Zhe into the depths of the forest, stepping on dead branches and rotten leaves. A rotten smell slowly approached. It was a smell that he hadn't smelled before, but it seemed to be the smell of decay. Shwa! The mist dispersed. Xian Zhe was the first to step out of the mist, but he screamed and retreated. Yi Qinghan grabbed Xian Zhe's back and followed him out of the fog. Looking at the scenery before him, he couldn't help but gulp. The ground was littered with corpses and bones. Some of them seemed to have been pierced through by tree branches, while others were pierced through by green vines. There were also some corpses that had been broken by a huge force. This was a real dead end. Ha ha ha, your luck is really good. The divine bird mocked. Xian Zhe could naturally hear that the divine bird was being sarcastic, but he could not refute it. The path ahead was very dangerous, but going back was even more so. There was no chance of survival. Yi Qinghan looked at the deep mountains and old forests. The tree roots were intertwined and twisted. It was unknown how many people had died here. It was estimated that most of the people who had come here over the years had died here. Most of the corpses had not decomposed, but it was unknown what had killed them. The vitality in their bodies had all disappeared. Their blood and qi had been completely devoured before they died. Forest of Death. Yi Qinghan's eyes shone with divine light. He withdrew Zhongquang. The space here was too small. Using Zhongquang would only limit his strength. Continue deeper. Whether it is dangerous or not, we have to go in. Yi Qinghan said seriously. Chapter 1548. The aura of death permeated the air. Some of the fresh corpses' blood was dim and had no energy. These corpses were giant gods or even supreme gods when they were alive. There were even some pseudo-realm lords. However, their blood and vitality had been devoured. They died mysteriously. Even Yi Qinghan felt pressured. Xian Zhe, you lead the way, Yi Qinghan said with certainty. The divine bird was unhappy and quickly said, Master, this guy's luck is not good. It's terrible. Can we not listen to him? Misfortune may be a blessing in disguise. Since he could bring me out of the maze, he can bring me to the paradise. Yi Qinghan replied firmly. Xian Zhe was embarrassed by the divine bird's words. He never thought that he would choose a dead end. At this time, he could only look at Yi Qinghan. After getting his permission, he walked into the depths of the forest. However, he had never seen such a bloody and cruel forest. Xian Zhe was panicking. His legs were shaking and he almost couldn't hold the sword in his hand. Yi Qinghan took a deep breath and followed Xian Zhe closely. His divine sense covered a 10-meter radius. If there was any movement, he would be able to sense it. Stepping on the corpses, the two walked forward step by step. The forest was dark and blood-red. Ancient trees towered into the sky. The forest covered the sun and scattered the sunlight. Screech! The birds flew past and ate the rotting corpses. However, their eyes were fixed on Yi Qinghan and Xian Zhe. Sha sha sha. Some eerie sounds rang in their ears. It seemed like some crawling creatures were approaching. However, they couldn't hear where they were swimming. Yi Qinghan came to a fresh corpse and stopped Xian Zhe. He slowly squatted down and turned the corpse over. He carefully checked the real cause of the expert's death. The corpse's clothes weren't torn. From the outside, other than the body being a little dim, it was twitching all over. Its face was ferocious and its arms were twisted out of shape. It seemed like it had suffered great pain before it died. Yi Qinghan took off the corpse's clothes. He found that there were many small needle-like holes in its legs. Its vitality, blood, and divine power were all sucked out from these holes. Ding! Yi Qinghan picked up a sword from the ground and cut a wound on the corpse. The blood that flowed out was light red and almost transparent. There was no energy in it at all. Following that, Yi Qinghan dissected the head of the deceased. It was completely empty. Whether it was the soul or the brain, everything had been devoured. It was like a corpse that had been dead for countless years, leaving only a skeleton. When he peeled off his scalp to take a look, it was just as he had guessed. His scalp was full of needle-like holes, densely packed together, making one's hair stand on end. What kind of creature is that? Yi Qinghan's gums were sore. Looking at this horrifying scene, he could not imagine what kind of calamity the corpse had encountered before it died. Even the divine bird and Xian Zhe had never seen such a creature before. At this moment, they could only stare. Yi Qinghan cleaned up a leaf and carefully examined it. He then said with certainty, "This creature comes from underground and is silent. It first grabs a person's legs from the surface and absorbs their blood, and vitality. It numbs the human's soul and causes the expert to fall to the ground. Then, it pierces its tentacles into the dead person's head and devours all of the human's essence." Xian Zhe looked at the tiny needle holes and then turned to look at the eerie white skeleton behind him. He found that there were needle holes in the bones of the skeleton's legs. He couldn't help but be shocked. How sharp are the tentacles of this creature? They can even pierce through the bones of experts. Xian Zhe asked in horror. Yi Qinghan looked around and found that there were needle holes in all the skeletons. Only then did he realize that there was a big problem. So many people had died. It was definitely not the work of one creature. It was definitely a large group of creatures. Gotcha. Yi Qinghan picked up a bone and gently bent it. The bone was actually broken. This meant that the bone marrow and essence in the bone had been sucked dry. That was why the bones were so fragile. What a terrifying creature! Yi Qinghan looked up and looked around. There were no creatures that could cause such injuries. He suspected that they were all underground. He didn't want to disturb this group of monsters, so he said, "Let's leave this area quickly. I hope they are full." Whoosh, whoosh. Xian Zhe quickly walked forward. Yi Qinghan followed closely behind. Suddenly, Yi Qinghan's pores exploded. A terrifying danger was approaching. Boom! Yi Qinghan stomped his foot and pulled Xian Zhe's arm. They rushed up and jumped onto a tree trunk. Whoosh! Several arms stretched out from the ground. The arms were covered with root. The roots were as thin and sharp as steel. Except for the 5 fingers, the rest were like cactus. However, the damage it caused was definitely more than a cactus. Gotcha! The arms grabbed empty air and brushed past Yi Qinghan's ankles. If Yi Qinghan's reaction had been any slower, he would have been caught by the arms. Those aren't human arms. Yi Qinghan's pupils constricted. He watched as the arms moved as fast as lightning. They grabbed at the tree trunk and carried Xian Zhe through the branches like agile monkeys. Boom! A black shadow brushed past. The palm slammed into the tree trunk. The thorns on the palm pierced into the tree trunk like tofu and broke it. Whoosh! Whoosh! Yeah. Following that, several creatures drilled out from the ground. They were so fast that their figures couldn't be seen clearly. They were even more agile than Yi Qinghan. They shuttled through the ancient trees, using the branches as their weapons. Yi Qinghan's hair stood on end. For the first time, he realized that he wasn't fast enough. Under the moonlight, he realized that they were monkey-like creatures. However, they could drill into the ground. The roots on their palms were sometimes soft like water, and sometimes hard like steel. Boom! Hua! Yi Qinghan twisted and turned. He carried Xian Zhe and shuttled back and forth. He stepped on the tree trunk and borrowed the force to jump. He couldn't even fly in this place. Damn it! The divine bird hid on Yi Qinghan's shoulder and cried out in panic when he saw the burrowing monkeys galloping from behind. That was because their speed was too fast and their intelligence was very high. They actually knew how to cooperate and capture Yi Qinghan. There were burrowing monkeys everywhere. They were thirsting for Yi Qinghan's blood and energy. This was the true forest of death. Anyone who entered this passage would die without a doubt. Unfortunately, Xian Zhe had chosen this passage. Master, speed up. These little bastards are too fast, the divine bird cried out. Yi Qinghan's expression was solemn. He didn't even have time to reply because this was his fastest speed. He could only rely on his powerful divine sense to evade the attacks of the burrowing monkeys. More and more burrowing monkeys rushed out from the ground and formed an alliance to surround Yi Qinghan. Boom! Yi Qinghan wasn't willing to be passive. He blasted out a fist as he dodged and struck the burrowing monkey's wrist. Bang! The burrowing monkey was sent flying. It rolled on the ground for more than 10 rounds before crawling back up. Its arm wasn't broken. Chapter 1549. Yi Qinghan's expression turned ugly. These burrowing monkeys were too tenacious. He couldn't kill them with his bare hands. Whoosh, whoosh. Yi Qinghan fled through the forest with Xian Zhe. With a wave of his hand, he grabbed a leaf and used his divine power to pierce through mountains and rivers. It turned into a streak of light and pierced through the burrowing monkey's ankle. Roar! Roar! The burrowing monkeys roared and screamed. They rolled on the ground, bleeding profusely. The blood angered the burrowing monkeys. At least 30 adult burrowing monkeys emerged from the ground and rushed toward Yi Qinghan with bared fangs and brandished claws. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! Yi Qinghan suddenly waved his hand and grabbed several hundred leaves, scattering them in all directions. The burrowing monkeys dodged in fright, but they didn't know that Yi Qinghan hadn't used any strength. It was just a bluff. If he used it without restraint, he would run out of strength sooner or later. Yi Qinghan took advantage of the situation and rushed out of the encirclement, fleeing into the depths of the forest like a madman. Roar, roar, roar! Squeak, squeak, squeak! Only then did the burrowing monkeys realize that they had been tricked. They beat their chests and scratched their ears, roaring angrily. Some burrowing monkeys refused to let go and chased after him. After escaping the encirclement, Yi Qinghan's speed was clearly much faster. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from the burrowing monkey's sight. Whoosh! A streak of light rushed into the depths of the forest. Only a few burrowing monkeys were left roaring behind. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh! Yi Qinghan breathed out a few mouthfuls of turbid air and hid under an ancient tree. The ancient tree towered into the sky. The tree's roots were actually sticking out of the ground. Looking through the gaps in the roots, he realized that the burrowing monkeys were no longer chasing after him. He guessed that he had left the burrowing monkeys' territory. Xian Zhe was sweating profusely. He was incomparably embarrassed. He didn't expect that he, who had always been extremely lucky, would choose such a dead end. Suddenly, Xian Zhe lowered his head and used his hand to push aside the weeds and thorns on the ground. With a joyful expression, he said, "Senior, look, there's a divine medicine." At this time, Yi Qinghan and the divine bird were trembling in fear. They did not pay attention to the nearby divine medicine. When they heard Xian Zhe say this, they looked down and could not help but be speechless. For a moment, they did not know if this guy's luck was really too good. It was a level 12 divine medicine, the blood lingji mushroom. It was already pure red in color. It was unknown how much blood it had sucked to grow to this level. It was full of life force, but it was restrained. If one did not pry it open, no one would know that such a stock of divine medicine was hidden here. Is this guy's luck really that good? The divine bird was so frightened that it even forgot to search for treasures. Otherwise, it really wouldn't have been Xian Zhe's turn to find such a treasure. I don't know. Maybe it's a blessing in disguise. Until the end, we can't be sure if this path will lead to certain death. Yi Qinghan stretched out his hand and cut open the soil in all directions. He placed the blood lingji mushroom into his universe ring and stood up. He said, "Let's continue and see if there's a way out in front." The forest here was more lush than outside. Some of the trees were dozens of feet tall, even taller than the mountains. The sun shone brightly, and specks of light flickered like stars. Some birds flew in the air, and their speed was very fast. However, there were no large ferocious beasts here. At least, they had not been found yet. It was very thick, and it emitted a rotten and moldy smell. However, the air above was exceptionally fresh. In the outside world, this would definitely be a big miracle. The two of them and the divine bird strolled in the forest. They were like ants, unable to fly in the sky or burrow into the ground. There was danger everywhere. Divine bird, fly into the sky and see if there's a way out. At least see how big this forest is. Yi Qinghan suggested. The divine bird rolled its eyes and said angrily, "Are you trying to get me killed? It's so dangerous here. If I fly up, I'll definitely die." Yi Qinghan was helpless. He couldn't climb the tree himself and leave Xianzhe behind. It would probably be more dangerous for him to stay on the ground alone. "Let's continue to walk deeper," Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice. The two of them and the bird searched for treasures as they walked. No one had ever left this place alive. The divine medicines here had survived for countless years. There were many level 12 divine medicines, and there were even some that surpassed level 12. There were even more level 11 divine medicines, and they were comparable to the sea dragon's treasury. Yi Qinghan moved the roots of the divine medicines as soon as he saw them. He even moved the immature ones away. In any case, other humans couldn't come and take them away. Those burrowing monkeys were guarding the outside. Unless one was a realm lord, they wouldn't be able to leave alive. Yi Qinghan continued to go deeper and deeper. Occasionally, he would be attacked by birds, but judging from his reaction speed, the birds were far inferior to him. He could only retreat helplessly. Half a day later, after traveling for an unknown distance, they entered a canyon. Finally, they weren't obstructed by the forest and mountain peaks anymore. It was boundless, and they couldn't see the end. There were steep cliffs, ravines, and thorns everywhere. Danger lurked everywhere. The mountain roads extended in all directions. It was unknown which path was the true path of survival. Roar! A deep roar reverberated in the ravine. It didn't dissipate for a long time. It was unknown where the roar came from, and it was unknown where it would dissipate. Yi Qinghan scanned the area and looked at Xianzhe, indicating that he could choose the direction. Xianzhe felt awkward and didn't dare to choose. "It's fine. Extreme misfortune will bring happiness. I believe in your luck." Yi Qinghan looked at Xianzhe and said with certainty. After receiving Yi Qinghan's permission, Xianzhe pointed to the front and said, "Let's take the middle path, which is the widest path." Yi Qinghan didn't hesitate and brought Xianzhe deeper into the ravine. The divine bird kept chirping. It didn't believe in Xianzhe's luck, but it couldn't do anything. This place was too dangerous. Even if Yi Qinghan abandoned it, it couldn't leave by itself. Occasionally they would find some corpses along the way. The bones were all rotten and would shatter with a step. However, those who could reach here were all people with great strength and luck. Their cultivation realm wouldn't be lower than pseudo-sector Lord Great Perfection. Yet, they would still die here. One could see how dangerous this place was. Yi Qinghan frowned and looked around. He didn't find any terrifying creatures. There were only some weak beasts with low spirit qi and no intelligence walking in the ravine. "Let's speed up." Yi Qinghan pulled Xianzhe deeper into the ravine. Xiao, Kacha! The mountain rocks were all crushed by Yi Qinghan. He moved as though he was flying, and each step covered tens of meters. Roar! At a fork in the road, the moment Yi Qinghan jumped in, he was pounced on by a ferocious beast. The beast's speed and strength were terrifying. It brought Yi Qinghan's body and smashed into a mountain. Yi Qinghan was shocked. He directly flung Xianzhe away. Pung! Yi Qinghan was pushed into a mountain rock, causing it to shatter. His body almost fell apart from the impact, and his qi and blood were in turmoil. Yi Qinghan grabbed the beast's neck with both hands. It was actually a lynx with pure black fur. Its claws were as sharp as blades, even sharper than divine weapons. However, it couldn't break through the feather spirit robe's defense. Otherwise, he would have lost half his life. Boom! Yi Qinghan fiercely flung the mountain cat away. Then, he leaped into the air and kicked the mountain cat in the stomach. Ayo! The mountain cat cried out and rolled on the ground. It spat out blood and looked at Yi Qinghan in fear. Chapter 1550. The lynx was as large as a tiger or leopard. It was fat and powerful, and its fangs were as sharp as blades. However, it was crippled by Yi Qinghan's kick. It writhed on the ground for a while but couldn't get up. Yi Qinghan rushed up and grabbed the lynx's neck. He realized that it was an intelligent creature. It was very intelligent and knew how to beg for mercy. "Where is the way out? Take me out and I'll spare your life," Yi Qinghan said in a deep voice. Roar. Although the lynx was a feline, its roar was eerie and terrifying. It was like a tiger or leopard. It lowered its head and roared to show its compromise. It was as docile as a domesticated cat. Yi Qinghan patted the lynx's head and said calmly, "Take me out of this dangerous place and into the paradise." The lynx crouched and licked Yi Qinghan's wrist. It didn't even dare to bite him. Then it stood up and ran forward. Yi Qinghan rushed over with Xianzhe. With the lynx leading the way, many detours were avoided. They shuttled through the canyon as fast as lightning. After traveling for more than 10 days, they encountered several ambushes from different species. However, Yi Qinghan could deal with them calmly. The lynx became more and more obedient and didn't dare to have any thoughts of rebellion. After passing through the canyon, they arrived at a large river. The lynx pointed at the opposite side of the river but didn't dare cross it. The river water was muddy and flowed endlessly. It was very rapid. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be muddy or dangerous. Yi Qinghan squinted his eyes and stared at the yellow river for a while. He couldn't find a way to cross the river. This independent space was very special. They couldn't fly and the river was wide. The current was so rapid that they couldn't even swim across. "Is there any other way to cross? Can we take a detour along this river?" Yi Qinghan asked. The lynx thought for a moment and turned around to rush downstream. Yi Qinghan pulled Xianzhe and jumped dozens of meters. They followed closely behind and traveled another 300 to 400 kilometers. They arrived at a narrow river about 100 meters wide. On the other side was a large peach blossom field. Immortal qi lingered around the area and the mountainside was shrouded in red clouds. It was like a paradise. Even across the river, they could feel the oppressive spiritual energy. Paradise! Yi Qinghan muttered to himself. Yi Qinghan was quite surprised. It seemed that the path Xianzhe had chosen wasn't a dead end, but the quickest. It was 100 meters. It was 100 meters wide. Even if he couldn't fly, he could still jump over it. Just as Yi Qinghan was considering how to jump over, Xianzhe tugged at Yi Qinghan's sleeve and pointed at a fiery red mountain downstream. He said with anticipation, "Senior, I want to go there." It looked very red, like a flame. However, the temperature wasn't that scary. It was about 300 to 500 kilometers away. Yi Qinghan frowned. If they went to the paradise to get the peach of immortality, they would definitely be teleported out. Since Xianzhe wanted to go there, there should be some kind of fortune waiting for them. Otherwise, he wouldn't have chosen this path. There was a cause and effect. "Let's go. I'll take you there." Yi Qinghan let the lynx go and brought Xianzhe with him. It looked very close, but it took them several hours to reach the mountain. However, the flame didn't come from this mountain. It came from the opposite side. Yi Qinghan and Xianzhe climbed up the mountain. When they reached the peak, they couldn't help but be stunned by the majestic atmosphere. It was a sea of fire. The nameless flame had been burning for who knows how many years. It was like the sun, emitting light. However, the temperature was restrained. Standing outside the sea of fire, they couldn't feel the heat at all. Instead, they felt comfortable, like they were soaking in a hot spring. So comfortable! Xian Zhe lay on the mountain peak and said while stretching. Yi Qinghan looked at the flame in astonishment. It was boundless and extended like a sea of fire. It emitted the power of yang. If Xian Zhe could absorb it, he could completely neutralize the yin qi in his body. Do you feel any changes in your dantian? Yi Qinghan asked expectantly. It's very comfortable. It's warm. I feel like I can use some of my power, Xian Zhe said excitedly. The divine bird curled its lips and couldn't help but admit, looks like this guy's luck is really good. He can find a place that can restrain his illness just by randomly choosing a path. Yi Qinghan looked at Xian Zhe and asked, can you speed up the absorption of the power of yang? I don't have much time to waste here with you. Xian Zhe was trying his best to absorb the power of yang and neutralize it with the viscous yin qi in his dantian, forming the 8 trigrams. The viscous yin qi and yang qi were gradually harmonizing. However, the amount of yin qi in his body was too much. It was unimaginable. It was impossible to completely harmonize it in a short period of time. I think it will take a few days to completely harmonize the yin and yang qi. Senior, why don't you leave first? This place doesn't seem to be dangerous. I can handle it. Xian Zhe opened his eyes and said helplessly. Yi Qinghan looked around. There was indeed no danger here. However, if he left, how would Xian Zhe enter the paradise? If he didn't leave and his main body didn't come in for the test for a long time, it would definitely attract Swan Potion's attention. I'll help you. I'll speed up the circulation of the power of yin and yang in your body. Yi Qinghan thought for a moment and said. After saying that, Yi Qinghan jumped down and actually rushed into the sea of fire. Xian Zhe was speechless. He was stunned and stood on the spot. The divine bird fiercely patted Xian Zhe's head and shouted, hurry up and absorb the power of yang and harmonize the power of yin. What are you standing there for? Xian Zhe sat on the ground and actively absorbed the power of yang. Boom! Hua! Yi Qinghan rushed into the sea of fire and splashed out flames. He kept spinning in the sea of fire and mobilized all the power of yang. The air suddenly became unbearably hot. The temperature suddenly rose and the power of yang reached saturation. Feeling the terrifying power of yin in Xian Zhe's body, it actually rushed into Xian Zhe's body. How could Xian Zhe withstand the impact of so much power of yang? Immediately, he screamed in pain. His body twisted and spasmed as he rolled and roared. Boom boom boom. Hua hua hua. The yin and yang in Xian Zhe's dantian started to spin. After harmonizing, it immediately flowed into his limbs and bones. A large amount of power of yang rushed into his body through his pores and flowed through his entire body. It burned his body until it was red and his face was twisted in pain. The power of yin also felt the power of yang in Xian Zhe's body. It dissolved into a gaseous state from his dantian and rushed around his body to help him harmonize the power of yang. Endless power of yin and yang raged in Xian Zhe's body. More and more of it kept on attacking his realm. All the bottlenecks were like rotten wood. They were crushed into pieces. Boom! Yi Qinghan actually created a whirlpool in the sea of fire. The inside of the whirlpool was pure red. The temperature could burn everything, but it couldn't burn him to death. It couldn't even break through his feather spirit clothes. However, danger was spreading. It couldn't burn him to death outside, but if he fell into the depths, his feather spirit clothes would probably be melted. Fire! Yi Qinghan mobilized the fire origin to block outside, isolating the temperature of the sea of fire. Seeing that the whirlpool had already formed, he summoned the heavy fire in the Iron Mountain and climbed up step by step. When he reached the peak, he realized that Xian Zhe couldn't withstand the pain and had fainted. If it wasn't for the power of yin in his body, he would have been burned to death. Chapter 1551. The power in Xian Zhe's body was indescribable. There was no way such a weak body could withstand so much energy. Yi Qinghan saw that Xian Zhe's body was on the verge of collapsing from the impact of the yin and yang energy. He hurriedly helped him up and used his world energy to help him defend himself while tempering his body. Xian Zhe's body was smashed apart by Yi Qinghan, rebuilt and refined over and over again. Even his blood vessels were reformed. His forehead was covered in sweat as he used up an endless amount of world energy. Fortunately, his current strength was comparable to a realm lord's. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to withstand the impact of the yin and yang energy. Boom, boom, whoosh. The yin and yang energy filled his limbs and bones. It was like the cycle of reincarnation connecting yin and yang. If Yi Qinghan had any evil thoughts and wanted to steal Xian Zhe's Dao fruit, he could have broken through quickly and become a realm lord. Unfortunately, Yi Qinghan didn't do that, nor could he. Everything had a cause and effect. If he did something like that, he would never be able to fight against Swan Patian. Yi Qinghan quietly helped Xian Zhe reforge his fleshly body. The essence of fire was condensed, and Xian Zhe's fleshly body slowly reached the paramount god level. If he wanted to advance further, he would need to expend even more energy. Xian Zhe was in a state of confusion. He knew that Yi Qinghan was helping him reforge his body and resist the impact of the yin and yang energy. However, he couldn't control the yin and yang energy with a clear mind. Time passed bit by bit. His body reached the peak paramount god level and could withstand the impact of the yin and yang energy. However, he still needed Yi Qinghan's help. The boundless yin and yang energy was like an ocean of nothingness. Each wave was higher than the last, and the yin energy in his dantian was also surging outward. It was impossible to imagine what level Xian Zhe would reach when his yin and yang were completely balanced. Once he unleashed his full power, would he really be able to break through the yin and yang and destroy the 9 worlds? Yi Qinghan sucked in a cold breath. Only now did he understand that a person's body could contain so much energy. The energy in Xian Zhe's body far surpassed his own. However, if he wanted to unleash it to its peak, he would need countless years of practice. Whoosh, a large amount of yang energy rushed towards Xian Zhe. To yang energy, it was like a wolf seeing food, it had a fatal attraction. Power also had its own spirituality. When yin and yang met, they intertwined with each other, forming the yin-yang 8 trigrams. It was not just one yin-yang 8 trigrams, but countless yin-yang 8 trigrams gathered to form the largest yin-yang 8 trigrams. Boom, boom. Heaven and earth rumbled, and all living things became restless. Even the blessed lands and heavenly passages were trembling. Heaven and earth anomalies appeared, and yin and yang merged into one, operating in harmony. It actually made the people in the outside world feel as if they were bathed in holy light. Yin and yang are mysterious, the universe gives birth to chaos. Swan Patian looked at the heaven and earth anomaly in shock. He finally knew the true identity of the person who had entered the paradise. The one who entered the blessed land's grotto heaven is Yinzi? Or Yangzi? Is the yin-yang sovereign about to be born? Swan Patian sucked in a breath of cold air and stared at the 11 black-clothed men outside the cave. He clenched his fists and calmed himself down after a long time. What's the situation? Even the 4 sector lords were confused. The current yin and yang were too harmonious. Within the blessed land's grotto heaven, Yi Qinghan sat cross-legged behind Xian Zhe. He poured in his world energy to help Xian Zhe defend and refine his body, allowing him to break through without any worries. The energy in Xian Zhe's body was so dense that it blocked his blood vessels. Yi Qinghan crazily absorbed the energy in Xian Zhe's body, helping him to clear his blood vessels and remove the impurities. Hua, With a thought, Yi Qinghan summoned a water curtain from the river beside and sprinkled it down, removing all the impurities on the surface of Xian Zai's body. Without the obstruction of the impurities, the yang energy rushed into Xian Zai's body even more ferociously. Xian Zai's body shone with holy light. His skin was as white as jade, and the yin-yang 8 trigrams appeared in front of his chest. He absorbed the yang energy in the sea of fire and used the harmonious yin and yang energy to break through his sea of consciousness, opening up his world and breaking through to the sector Lord realm. If the excess energy couldn't withstand it, it would rush into Yi Qinghan's body. How perverted was Yi Qinghan's body? Even if all the energy in Xian Zai's body was channeled into his body, he wouldn't die. He could even use the majestic yin and yang energy to break through to the sector Lord realm. Yi Qinghan benefited greatly at this moment. It was as though he had gained control of yin and yang, peeking into the heavenly Tao. At this moment, Yi Qinghan returned to his peak state. With a thought, more than half of the blessed land's grotto heaven was under his control. With a wave of his hand, he could pierce through the void and destroy space. Xian Zai continued to open up his world. The boundless world was boundless. Xian Zai slashed apart the darkness with his sword. The sword light was like stars, forming a world in the depths of his sea of consciousness. It was much bigger than Yi Qinghan's world. Energy began to be hidden in the world. Yin and yang energy poured out like a torrential river, gathering in the world. The entire world was rapidly filled with yin and yang energy. It was incomparably dense. Yi Qinghan and Xian Zai's bodies formed a cycle. At the start, Xian Zai couldn't withstand too much energy and pushed out too much energy to Yi Qinghan. Now, Yi Qinghan didn't hesitate to push the energy back to Xian Zai. At this moment, Xian Zai's absorption of yang energy accelerated. The sea of flames surged in reverse, forming a sea of fire that swallowed the two of them. However, Xian Zai rapidly absorbed the yin energy. After harmonizing the yin energy, he condensed his body and tried to break through to the next realm. Boom! Boom boom boom! Hua! The sector Lord bottleneck shattered like a piece of rotten wood. It couldn't withstand Xian Zai's attacks at all. His young and tender face blossomed with divine light. His face was no longer malevolent. Instead, it relaxed. He woke up and started to circulate the yin and yang energy on his own. Hua! Boom! Blood flowed like 10,000 horses galloping. The aura was majestic. Even if one listened from afar, one could still feel the majestic momentum. Xian Zai's flesh and blood crazily reassembled, containing the harmony of yin and yang. This was a true indestructible body. It was basically indestructible. It wasn't like Tong Tong, whose indestructibility had a limit. However, Xian Zai's was different. Boom! Hua! Xian Zai's dark sea of consciousness suddenly shone brightly. The sector Lord bottleneck shattered, and he officially stepped into the sector Lord realm. The moment he entered the sector Lord realm, Xian Zai's sea of consciousness was like a real world. It was like another 9 worlds. Yin and yang move, heaven and earth are born. The universe is broken, all living things are born. I am the master. A crisp voice rang through the clouds. It was the voice of a girl. Xian Zai's fingertips transformed into runes. His 10 fingers interlocked and the yin and yang 8 trigrams entered his body. The yin and yang in his dantian were completely harmonized. Although the energy in his body wasn't viscous, it was boundlessly vast. More importantly, the yin and yang energy in his world was rapidly guiding the world, giving birth to all living things. Plants were growing rapidly. It was many times more advanced than Yi Qinghan's world. Hua! All living things absorbed yin and yang, but they were also releasing yin and yang energy. Not only did the yin and yang energy in his world not decrease, it actually increased by a lot. Hua! Xian Zai waved his hand. The energy in his world could be circulated. Such power had surpassed the Sector Lord realm. However, she couldn't unleash it to its peak. She couldn't even unleash 1,000th of its power. She was the child of Een. She was the child of Een that Lien Patian spoke of. However, her family had concealed her identity. Even Yi Qinghan and the Divine Bird couldn't see through her. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.